Kamuela. O Belkali Ulewe Heaka. O Giaka Noya, Maika Hikiku, Maiki Moy, Maiki Tapa Tapawe Kane. Heaka Pulika by Oha. Naya Naya Kamehele. Naya. Eolae. Aloha. Aloha. This morning, we had a kani of the pu. It sets the tone, our cup. Right? We had a pule, an oli. The oli is pule pale. It's the oli of protection. This was nohoana when I first came in. I asked for protection of everyone. We all stay protected as we go on in life. The second chant I did is Eala Ua Au. And I did a pule for a blessing of the good day. And I asked as the sun rises and the sun sets a path for us, that we follow this path in the light. Aye? And as the rooster crows, aye, and everything comes alive in life. Eola E. Life lives. Aye? And we live life. I say, mahalo no kiela. Thank you so much for having me here today to do this opening for you guys. We call it a kavilina. The vilina is the greetings. For us, Kane came down from the heavens. Kane is our God of life, the God of fresh water. Kane kabai ola, Kane nuya kea. And Kane comes down from the heavens, and he shares time with the people. And he actually has ava, and he shares this ava, a drink of our gods. Right? And they talk story, and then Kane soon goes to sleep. But he spends his time with the people. And it is through the waters of life that we are sustained, that we live. And it is the waters of life that we carry in the Ipu of Lono. Right? The Ipu of Lono is all the clouds that come in. And Kane is in the fresh waters of the rains that come from those clouds. They water our Aina. And for us people here in Hawaii, we live in harmony with our Aina. Right? We diverted a little bit of water from a stream. Not divert the stream, just a little bit. And we called it an Albie. And we would take just a little bit of water, and that Albie, the channel, would flow alongside the stream, the rivers, and it would water the kalo patches. And with these kalo patches, we were able to farm kalo. And you know kalo, right? It's so strong, healthy. You can take the lau, you can take the corn, you can take the huli, and replant it right back in. Kalo is so strong, you can take kalo from the wetlands and plant it into the dry lands. They say you can take the dry lands, plant it into the wetland. It will grow. This is a very hardy plant for us. This is our older brother as Hawaiians. And we take care of our older brother because our older brother takes care of us. And with that, we survive. To this day, we are here as Hawaiians. Right? I say mahalo nui loa. We have something for you this morning. We have a pule. I believe some are on your seats. Right? We wanted to ask that you join us this morning in this pule, this prayer. It's not a prayer to any specific God. It's a prayer to above, asking for knowledge. All right? It asks for this knowledge that is hidden. This wisdom that's hidden. It's hidden in the chants, in the meles. For us in Hawaii, you know, before the missionaries came, our society was oral. Everything was done through the chants and the meles. All the knowledge, all the science was all taught through these songs, through the mele. And we follow these chants and we recapture them today. And we're learning so much. All the things that are hidden that was not known to us 50 years ago. 20 years, it's all coming back. And so we kept calling out above. Eho mai ka ike mai luna mai. And we call above to ask that knowledge to come down. O na mea huna noya, o na mele. So all the things that are hidden in the songs, they come back. All our knowledge comes back to us. Eho mai, eho mai, eho mai. And with the eho mai, we're asking for that knowledge to be bestowed upon us. So that we think, we wake up, we watch the world around us. Makoko, we ask that all of you come and join with us this morning. All right? So the first line, ai, hui luna, mahalo nui lo. So the first line, e ho mai, ka ike mai, luna mai. You can say, o na mea, huna no'eo, o na mele. E ho mai, e ho mai, e ho mai. Now this chant is done 3 times, right? 3 lines, 3 times. Each time we go to a higher octave. So we'll start off at a lower octave, e ho mai, and then when we get to the bottom line, very easy, the same words 3 times, we'll rise up in octave. So it'll sound like this. E ho mai, 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 ka ike mai luna mai. Okay? Mai kai? Ah, mai kai no hoi. Hey, oh. Oh, Margo, go. We're going to do this all together. E ho mai ka ike mai luna mai. O na mea huna noia. O na mele. E ho mai. E ho mai. E ho mai. E ho mai ka ike mai luna mai. O na mea huna noia. O na mele. E ho mai. E ho mai. E ho mai. E ho mai ka ike mai luna mai. O na mea huna noia. O na mele. E ho mai. E ho mai. E ho mai. Mai kai mahalo.
Thank you, Kumu, for that warm welcome. And I want to welcome you all here today for our 4th Annual Hawaii Sustainability and Higher Education Summit. It's kind of a long title, but we're really excited to have all of you here, and we thank you for your time and your participation. Just as some housekeeping, if you haven't already, please go to the front out and register. And if that's not a good enough reason, we also have Wi-Fi, and that's where you get your username and password, so make sure to head out there for that. There's a bathroom downstairs and kind of down the hallway if you're looking for that, and there's exits here and there. And we're proud to announce that this will be a zero waste event, so we have different bins for our recyclables and our compost. So we invite you to kind of take this on as a group shared kuleana to make sure that this is separated. And speaking of Kuleana, we thought it would be a great time to talk about our menu. And Matt Lynch will talk more about our celebratory luau that we're having tomorrow. But except for that meal, all of our meals, including the student Saturday, will be entirely vegetarian and vegan and catered by Jen from Juicy Brew. We thought that that would be a really, thank you. We thought it would be really appropriate, since we're all gathered here to talk about sustainability and talk about how we can lessen our environmental impact, that we serve this food. And we want you to know that whatever your food choices are at home, we really appreciate you for kind of experimenting with us today. And we promise you're in good hands. Jen has some amazing food. So thank you for your time and kind of stretching if that's not really comfortable for you. And so before I bring on Michael Bruno, who is our Vice Chancellor of Research, just want to say one more time, welcome, and it's so good to see some familiar faces, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know the unfamiliar faces these next few days. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's always difficult to follow a student in these kinds of things. Great job. So I'm Michael Bruno, and it is my pleasure to welcome everybody to this fourth Annual Sustainability Summit. This is an area that's near and dear to my heart. I spent 30 years working in coastal sustainability, coastal hazards, and the like, sustainable development. It's also an area that I think how many of you are not from here? How many are visiting UH? Oh, good, okay. So maybe it's obvious to you all, perhaps by the plane ride that you had to take here, that we are in an interesting location. We are the most remote populated landmass on the planet, and so we speak about sustainability, research, and education, but in a very serious way, we live it. So this is obviously an important area, a critical area for us. It is also an area that is consistent, very consistent with Native Hawaiian belief system. And you already heard the word kuleana here, and that's a word that you visitors, if you stick around long enough, you'll hear that word used very often. And sometimes maybe we use it too often in the sense of, yeah, that's my thing, and this, this is your thing, and never the two shall meet. But kuleana has a much deeper meaning in the Native Hawaiian belief system. It's a personal responsibility, a responsibility that we take or should take very seriously and be honored by having that responsibility. And that responsibility in an important way is extended to the environment. We already heard that. Water, land, ocean, the natural environment, and it is our responsibility, or kuleana, to be stewards of that environment. So as a Hawaiian place of learning, Manoa should embrace this field as an important area for us to perform research and education, and we do that. And I would encourage the students in the audience to reach out, if you haven't already, and seek those places on campus where we are doing important world-class research in the School of Ocean and Earth Sciences and Technology, in the College of Social Sciences, in Water Resources Research Center, the Sea Grant program, other research centers, geology, and others that are doing very important work. And even I would throw in there the Lion Arboretum and the aquarium. If you haven't visited, go there. They're also doing important work in this area. The School of Architecture, and I had lunch recently with the Dean of the Law School, who listed out all of the work they're doing in the community related to essentially sustainability. So my point is there's a lot here, and for you students and maybe even you faculty, get out and understand better all of the good work that we're doing in the area of sustainability. And with that, I'll end and welcome you all, and good luck and enjoy the summit. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. It's been 12 long, short months since 13 actually. We did this in February last year. So before we launch into things, I want to take a moment to acknowledge our financial sponsors because this would not be possible without their support. And it really, sponsor is not an adequate word this year because they've really taken on a much deeper collaborative role and have really partnered with us to make this happen. We're deeply grateful for that because this is very important work. So Hawaii Energy, if you are here representing that organization, please stand. Would like to recognize our title sponsor, Hawaii Energy. Mahalo. And our supporting, you may remain standing. We'll hold our applause to the end this time. Our supporting sponsors, Train Building Advantage, if you're here, please stand. Johnson Controls, please stand. Judith, Alyssa, thank you. The Hawaiian Electric companies may not be here yet. They're on their way. Starwood Hotels, you guys that are flying in from the neighbor islands get to stay at the Moana Surfrider Sheraton. You lucky buggas. They have done some incredible sustainability work, and we're very excited to sponsors gave us a deep discount so that we could experience that. So please be nice to them so we get invited back. No loud parties. Tim, I'm talking to you. Alaska Airlines also were sponsors and helped fly in some of our invited guests from the mainland. So let's just take a moment to acknowledge our sponsors and partners. Mahalo, you guys. Okay, you may be seated. This sounds so formal, my gosh. Spawners. That's what happens when you are finishing up your presentation at midnight the night before. You underperformed, there you go. Okay, so do you guys remember, hands up who was here last year? Excellent. Hands up who's new? Excellent, welcome. If I can find, why are you over there? Do you guys remember our interactive tool we called Live Sift, Meeting Sift? Yeah. Okay, great. So we're going to do, if I could find I'm having major tech issues this morning. Here we go. Sustainability Summit. Who's not on Wi-Fi? Hands up. Yet. Okay. So I'm going to say this slowly. You're going to look at your Wi-Fi options, and it's EWC guest. And the username is sustain310. And the password is 310 sustain. Again, username is sustain310, password 310 sustain. Thank you. Oh, that can't be good. All right. I think what I'm going to do is we may come back to, if I can get Live Sift up, we'll use it. But essentially, for those of you in the room that have used it before, if I can get it up and running, during our keynote addresses this morning, there will be you go to meetingsift.com, and you'll enter the event code that will be listed there, HSE 2016. It'll be on there when you see it. And you can essentially, not text, but enter your questions wirelessly for the panel. If I can get that up and running, great. If not, we have a workaround with a microphone for Q&A for the panel later this session. If I just fix my monitor, get back here, and we can get back on track. Okay. so much for our meeting sift check-in. Let's switch gears now, and I want to give you an overview of the next 2 days. So first and foremost, we are here to work. This is a working session. I hope you are well rested. I know some of you have had an early morning. It is going to be a long and intense day, and I do not apologize for that because this is very important work. So we're here also to learn from each other, and we are here to bring this back to our campuses. So please take pictures, post, share, hashtag, all that. Our hashtag is HSHE16, Hawaii Sustainability Higher Education 16. We're also live streaming this event. So the tech table at the back is on a live internet feed out to YouTube. And they're also recording so that we can broadcast this on Olelo Community Access television, which means my auntie and uncle are going to say, "Hey boy, I see you on TV again." But it's interesting how the penetration that gets. And the information that we're going to cover this morning is important not only for the work that we're going to do this afternoon, but it's also, as you'll see, key information that we need to get out to our communities. So that's the reason behind that. Now, if you don't want to be filmed, then find a table in the very back, and that will be your mechanism to opt out, okay? Our lovely photographer, Bethany Brown, is here. Thank you, Beth. She's been tasked with making us all look taller, handsomer, and prettier. So smile when she when the camera's pointed on you. We are all responsible for creating a successful event. So another way to say that is if at the end of the next 3 days you feel like this was a waste of your time, then it's a shared responsibility. Okay, so this is my invitation to you to jump in and take accountability for the results that we create. It's not often that we get to spend this time together. It's only once a year. And this afternoon, we have 3 hours uninterrupted to be able to do a deeper dive on some of the thematic areas that are strategic to our work in sustainability. So the morning keynotes are all designed to be sort of TED Talk style, high impact. I'm a firm believer that brevity is clarity, even though I tend to waffle on. So our keynote speakers are designed for that. You're going to hear from 7, hopefully, speakers total before lunch, and then we'll only have a 1-hour lunch break. It's a buffet line downstairs. Again, delicious food. If you've not had Juicy Brew Catering before, you're in for a treat. It's my favorite. I am definitely not a vegan, but she's my favorite vegan chef and may convert me one of these days. It's really delicious food. I also invite you to model behaviors that are conducive to group intelligence. So last year we heard from Leith Sharp. She was one of our keynote speakers, and this was one of the books that she threw up here. This is a fascinating read for anyone that is interested. It's a mathematician that is studying behavioral psychology or behavioral sciences. Utilizing our access to big data. So we can collect millions of data points in real time on human behavior, and then imagine having a mathematician's mind try to seek to distill the patterns from that. And so one of the things that I was able to distill from this book is that there are both personal behaviors and group behaviors that are conducive to maximize the intelligence of a group, right? Hands up who's ever experienced death by meeting. Okay, so, me too. Hands up who wants to experience death by meeting today. Nobody, okay, great. Okay, so here are some tools, right? Very simple. Let's not use the word but. Okay, so if you spend 5 minutes telling me your thoughts and I say, yeah, but what did I just do? I negated everything you just said. So instead, and let's hold each other accountable to this, okay? This is a small, subtle, but very powerful tool. Yes, and here's what I think. And all of a sudden it shifts from combative to collaborative. Does that make sense? Is everybody willing to commit to that? Aye? Mahalo. Very good. Yes, and we'll have an opportunity to practice this afternoon. The second thing, key thing that I was able to learn from this book is this idea of group communication patterns. And so this is a graphic that's sort of representative of a group that's experiencing death by meeting. And so you see here that there are two individuals that are dominating this conversation. So the thick line represents the number of times those two individuals are communicating, and they're dominating the group. And when you have a group that is displaying this communication pattern, that group's intelligence is hampered. So you can have a group of experts in a group, and if their communication pattern is this, then a group of non-experts that has a communication pattern that's more balanced, like this, will often outperform that group. Does this make sense? The key to high performance lay not in the content of a team's discussions, but in the manner in which it was communicating. And there's a Harvard Business Review article you can read up on that by Sandy Pentland, who's the author of social physics. Pattern here is more important than the content of what is being discussed. I'm gonna let that sink in for a moment while I excuse myself and get some water. Hold on. Okay, are you okay? I'm gonna keep talking while you go, all right? Okay. So, that's what's for today. One last moment on the sort of process flow for today. Hands up if you are participating in the Campus Sustainability Planning Working Group session this afternoon. Great. Hands up if you have not yet completed the one-pager summary. Okay, you have lunchtime to do it. Please be sure that you do, okay? That'll be a tool that you need for this afternoon's working session. Come see me at the break if you need more information about that. I'll be at this table right here. All right, so that's the day's agenda. We are not going to be breaking to lunch until 1. We do have a break at 11 for our poster session. Poster session, you can see displayed. These essentially are projects that were submitted for consideration for the President's Green Initiative Award. So if you were a student that submitted to that, please stand. Yeah. So I'm going to give you some instructions ahead of time for 11 o'clock. At the break, you'll go and take your spots in front of your posters. And then obviously there's not enough room in front of these sessions for all of us to walk through at that time. So let's sort of self-moderate ourselves as a big group. There'll be ample coffee and pastries and fruit outside to keep us powered. And do take a moment to walk through and learn and look at the type of creativity that we can unleash and the type of innovation and sustainability that we have latent across the 10 networks of our campuses. So, all that being said, let's talk about what is new since last year. So, we have turned a pretty major milestone. Our president has really embraced and taken ownership of that executive sustainability policy that was formalized at last year's summit in a way, quite frankly, quite inspirational. And so the first day back in the office this year, I was called into the office to represent all of you here, to represent the groups that have been working on sustainability, curriculum development and integration of sustainability into operations. And the president shared with a select group of leaders in both the community and in our school an epiphany that he had had over the holiday season. And that epiphany was this, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he realized that he was having the same conversations around sustainability with different groups. STEM guys were talking about sustainability, so were the Ike Hawaii guys, so were the Malama Honua guys, so were the sustainability guys, so were the sensor guys. Everybody's talking about it. In operations, we've been talking about it. And his epiphany was, why don't we get them all in the same room together and talk together and try to coordinate and figure out how to be more effective as a group. So this is the Board of Regents on Hiki Analea. We took them out for a cruise to start to introduce the board to this idea, give them a tangible and emotional experience of sustainability and an experience of how sustainability is deeply integrated. It's in fact, it's a milestone along the way to what is possible in terms of the ancestral knowledge that resides in the islands. So President convened a gathering at UHWO on February 12th with representatives from each of these very diverse groups. Master Navigator Nainoa Thompson was there and delivered a keynote that morning that really, as you can imagine, lit a fire under us and highlighted the urgency of the situation and the state of the planet and the need to act rapidly and to act collaboratively. One of the things that stuck out most to me in his address was this idea of it's all hands on deck. We need everybody right now. So that's what we're here to do. And today, this carries on to the work that we're doing today. So we're gonna draw that thread from what was started there, where we started to, basically we had a napkin sketch of what might be possible if we were to be able to coordinate more effectively between the different silos that is inherent, not specific to the University of Hawaii. This is more a characteristic of institutions in higher education, right? So how do we break out of those silos to be more effective as an organization? If the university knew what the university knew, imagine what we could do. This graph here was something that Pualani helped and I helped to facilitate with our group that was looking at the nexus of sustainability curriculum development and Ike Hawaii. And so up until that day, when Larry Kitamura, Hawaiian scholar, introduced us to a new word in the Hawaiian lexicon, my understanding of sustainability was that it did not exist in the Hawaiian vocabulary. That if you were either sustainable or you were dead. Right. The end result that we were shooting for, that our ancestors here were shooting for, was abundance, right? Aina Momona, abundant lands. And sustainability was a milestone that you blew by along the way to flourishing and thriving and restoration, right? And this word at the side, ma'o, was explained to us as the perpetuation of well-being, the closest Hawaiian approximation to the word sustainability. If our end goal is to survive, what happens if we fall short, right? So, the University of Hawaii Office of Sustainability is a backbone organization that is coordinating the work that is being done on the campuses. Our role is to support and enhance what you do at the campus level. So what we're looking at is a redesign of our institutional structures, but working with the existing social architecture. So a little bit of a look back to see how we got here. And if you think about our institution as a network of campuses distributed across the state, how do we coordinate transformative action across that very diverse network, right? Hands up if you participate in a human operating system that looks like this. Everybody. Yeah? Command control operating system. We have been organizing as humans ourselves this way for centuries, and for some good reasons. Command control gives us the benefit of scaled efficiencies and consistencies, right? So that's why we've organized ourselves that way. Hands up if you participate in a human operating system that looks like this. If you're on Facebook or Twitter, or if you've looked at the internet, your hand should be up. So hands up who's participated in what. Okay, so we understand we have a tangible experience of the power of networks. We're going to call this the adaptive operating system. This is a system that we have also been organizing ourselves in, a human operating system we've been organizing ourselves in for centuries, but in recent times, especially with technology, has facilitated a very visceral understanding and experience of the power of networks. We want to think about movements like Occupy Wall Street or even the Aloha Aina movement across our Pai'aina. Now, the adaptive operating system is great at rapid diffusion of ideas, and it's great at adaptive response, being dynamic and morphing in response to the question or the challenge that it's posed. What it's less good at is scaled efficiencies and consistencies. So we were able to, through the adaptive operating systems, rally and organize a movement like Occupy Wall Street, yet the fundamental banking system has not changed. The dual operating system, or the systemic and strategic integration of both, is the brave new frontier of human organizing, human operating systems. And that is what we are basing our strategy of sustainability. We're looking for nothing short than rapid transformation. And why? Because the time is now and the need is urgent. So over the years, we've had many innovative initiatives launched despite a lack of systemic integration. So you've had this rise and fall of sustainability champions that come and go, and they're passionate, and so they find resources and they make something happen, and because it's not systemically integrated, it rises and it falls. That has changed. Okay, in 2013, we had the first annual sustainability summit. This arose from the adaptive operating system. That draft policy that we presented at that first summit, hundreds of people had input on that from not only across the 10 campuses, but from our communities as well. So that's a document that has literally by the people, for the people. And it outlined the framework for what we're doing now for the systemic integration of sustainability into the very DNA of our organization. The moment when President Lesnar swiped his iPad last year and formalized that policy represented a very significant milestone. And the current status, although you may not yet feel it at your campus or in your classroom, but the current status is that there is this tectonic shift of alignment, where there's alignment of system resources to support the needs of students, faculty, and staff, and funding mechanisms being developed to support system-wide sustainability initiatives. It's a very exciting time to be involved with this work at the university. What is this all for? Why are we doing this in the first place? And the answer is right there. The question that we're asking ourselves is, how do we create global citizens that graduate from our institution, or even that our institution touches, who are informed, engaged, and equipped with the skills and experiences not only to go out and help solve the challenges our communities face with regards to climate change and rapidly escalating conditions, but also to go out and create flourishing, right livelihoods. Many of the jobs that we're preparing our students for don't even exist yet. They're going to invent those jobs. They're going to invent those livelihoods. So the President's Green Initiative Award was a social experiment to try to unleash some of the latent creativity that we have in that network and to demonstrate how, through social architecture, we can create the conditions that are conducive for ideas to emerge, arise, be built upon, and be implemented at scale if they're appropriate. So 2 of these projects tomorrow will be announced as receiving $10,000 awards for their implementation based on their ability or their potential to have a measurable impact on their campus or in the community. When I showed this presentation out in Minneapolis last year, they said, wow, that was cool, can you do it in slow motion? So here you go in slow motion just for you again. If you have participated in a command control human operating system, you have probably experienced how frustrating it is for an idea to emerge, arise, and be built upon if you are participating in the lower rungs of that hierarchy. What we are doing now is creating pathways for these ideas to emerge. I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge the sustainability councils that have been formalized through this executive policy. And so now we have formally recognized structures that participate in the adaptive operating system. These are formal pathways for ideas to flow through to our executive branch. I'd invite the following individuals to stand. First, I'd like to recognize our system-wide sustainability council: Benjamin Katz from Kauai Community College, Blake Araki from UHWO Oahu, Brian Furuta from Kapuolani Community College, David Tanaka from Honolulu Community College, Eileen Kane from Leeward Community College. Don't be shy, you guys. I know you're in the room. Robert Burton from UH Maui College. Did I miss anybody else? If I did not mean to offend you. But if I missed you, please stand and identify yourself. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is representatives here. There are other representatives that are not present today. Please acknowledge. So the System-Wide Sustainability Council is more focused on operations and planning, and we have members of that council that serve on the System-Wide Sustainability Curriculum Coordination Council as well, so that there are pathways for ideas to flow between our curricular, our teaching and learning, and our operational aspects. The System-Wide Sustainability Council advises the Vice President for Administration, whose purview is operations and planning, and the System-Wide Sustainability Curriculum Coordination Council advises the Vice President for Academic Affairs. So the following individuals please stand and be recognized: Albie Miles from UHWO, Brian Toronto, Manoa, Eileen Kane, Leeward Community College, Justin Carvalho from Kauai Community College, Timothy Botkin from Maui College. And did I miss anybody? Bob Franco, please stand and be recognized, Kamuela Community College. Thank you very much for your service. So as we leave today and the next day and go back into our campuses, I invite you to ask the question, what does this social architecture for catalyzing institutional change look like at your campus? How is your campus sustainability committee strategically integrated with the executive decision makers at your campus so that there are pathways for ideas to arise, emerge, be built upon, and implemented if they're vetted and suitable? And also to enhance the sensory capacity and improve the decision-making capacity of our executive teams. None of us is as smart as all of us, and sustainability just might be the problem that solves our institutions. Welcome everybody to the 4th Annual Hawaii Sustainability in Higher Education Summit and Working Session. Okay, so our opening plenary session this morning is, I'm gonna let Kamu tee it up. The title of the session is Ancestral Knowledge, Contemporary Practice. And Kamuela Enos is the Director of Social Enterprise for Manoa Farms, which is one of the most amazing social enterprises you'll ever see. It's a beautiful organic farm that produces delicious local food, but that's not their end product. Their end product are community leaders, and they are really disrupting, positively disrupting the social fabric of the community that they serve in really inspiring ways. And so Kamu was instrumental in this early on in this work, and in particular with the first Sustainability Summit. And it is really my sincere pleasure to welcome him back to the stage to help share some perspectives to inform our work this afternoon. Please welcome Kamuela Enos.
Hello everybody, thank you for allowing me to talk at you guys for a while. I want to introduce and bring up our speakers too. I think we're all kind of a kako thing. So Professor Albie Miles from University of Hawaii, West Oahu, and Kevin Chang, the Executive Director of Kua Aina Ulu Awamo, whose station is in that corner if you're interested to hear more. I messed things up. You guys can hear me or what? Should I yell? It's kind of soft. Okay. While they sit down, I just really want to mahalo everybody for being here today. I know there's a lot of work that goes on, especially right now. It's like March, everything is banging off at your university. So to be here shows a commitment to this idea of sustainability, and I think it's a really important commitment. I want to honor your time today by just having some folks talk a little bit about this idea of what does collaboration look like. Because you hear a lot of stuff around collaboration today. You can continue to hear it, but the will to collaborate and the ability to collaborate are two different things, and sometimes you may not recognize that they're two different things, and then you end up, if a program drops in the community and no one's there to use it, does it make an impact kind of scenario. So I also like the idea of harkens back to a DOE school kid. We always have these great speakers that come to Aina High and say, you can do it, you're just great, I did all these wonderful things, and then they would leave and you'd be saying well, how did you do it though? And well, went back to smoking weed. But I think the important part of these types of conversations was how do you reverse engineer success? How do you have an actual practice brought to the table, not in a way that's just oh, look how awesome this is. this is how this was done. This is the mechanics, but these are the values. And this is a process you have to deploy if you want to work. And if we're going to work in community, that's going to be more and more important to understand. What's the process of working with community? So really briefly, I have something queued up on my iPad if you can't tell. I was thinking about sitting down and talking with them. But anyway, the opening quote I wanted to leave you to put out there was one from this Lilia Watson. And her quote I love. I saw a long time ago and it stayed with me forever, and it kind of been woven into everything I do. And it's like, if you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. If you're here, sorry, I have a cold. If you're here because you see your liberation as bound up with mine, then let's walk together. I think if that is not the spirit of the collaboration you guys go forth with, I think you're going to end up with a program, not a relationship. So one of the part I want to also bring to bear is to add some continuity to this talk. I think I've been asked for some reason to speak 3 times. This is the 3rd time at a sustainability panel. I don't want to keep repeating myself. But there is an arc to it. The first time I spoke, it was on the dissertation I had done that basically deconstructed the word sustainability back to its spiritual roots in the Old Testament and looked at the Aina-based practitioners and their spiritual roots in the Kumulipo. And understood there are 2 different words, and they have a different type of methodology to deploy them. One was biocentric, which was our spiritual stories that were interrelated to the landscape, and the other one was anthropocentric, where we're sustaining a commodity for our perpetual use. And if we confuse the 2, then we're not understanding how to have a sustainability paradigm that works for Hawaii, because the spiritual one came from islanders that had to live here, and I think that was an important concept. The second year I spoke was with a panel of practitioners in community. I had Pai, had folks from Kauai, Huiku, Mauli'ola. All these different organizations represented Native Hawaiians that were doing actual environmental work, and they talked about the value of it. Today's conversation, I think it's really aligned with what the opening statements were pushing at, was people who are allies, people who are working with Native Hawaiian communities in ways that create a powerful dynamic that supports the community but supports their work. And how do we really understand what they're doing, what are the outcomes of it, but how they also got to be asked to come to community. This is an important thing to do, not just because it's just. I think it's really important to do because traditions of ancestry of all Native peoples, and everyone's indigenous to somewhere, had systems that understood their local ecology, and they had ways to interact with it. And we need to be able to pull those voices to the table meaningfully. You can go to Waina and they talk about frickin' environmentalists, but these are Hawaiians, and they have a traditional practice of living in the landscape for thousands of years. So how do you bridge that gap? Another one you would see is like if you're talking about the green economy and the rise of how are these sustainable ideas deployed in ways that communities can take and make a living wage job off of, then you're talking about the dynamic that's kind of underpinning how Trump gets elected. You look at those types of conversations, it's easy to tisk at the poor people, but I think that's a failure of folks that are in our circle, to reach out to them to understand, you feel threatened, and here are some ways that we can bridge that gap to help pull you into this circle. Because we don't have the luxury of having enemies in this conversation moving forward. We have to be able to understand how to work collectively to address the problems as they come. Climate change, don't care who you are, who you voted for. And if it's only your little group that's surviving, you're dead too, because we need this collective approach. But the conversation, how do you work collectively in a way that's just? And I think, how do you enlarge the circle? And I think the first thing I wanted to put out there is this idea of knowing how to enter. First of all, you gotta know your community. For those, I'm really lucky that I'm a 2nd generation activist, so some of this is not my own knowing, it's what was imparted on me, but in researching the word sustainability, we saw that it basically, this idea of Western thought embracing holistic natural systems really reemerged in the late 1900s with the conservation movement, and again, really strongly in the 60s with Wes Jackson and Rachel Carlson and the emerging awareness of environmentalism. Around that same time, Native peoples are being pushed off of their land more and more and being marginalized into isolation in their own either homesteads or the reservations. And these were the people that were doing the things that Wes Jackson and Rachel Carlson were talking about. They're living, they're heirs to it. So understand, if you're going to go into that community, you're not coming in as an expert. You're coming in with skills, with a really valuable, but you're not the expert of sustainability. You're an ally, and I think that's the first point. The second part of it is like knowing your value to community. What are you coming there? Have you done the research to understand what they're trying to do? Do you know how to help them? Do you know what their values are? And not in a way where it puts you as a subservient person, but as a person that has something to offer that's meaningful and valuable to them, so you get asked. I think that's the key thing we're trying to figure out. How do you get asked if you're wanting to help? And how do you stay getting asked after the first time? I was thinking about this South Park episode I saw, which is really funny. But all of the green cars were creating smog, and the smog was and I see that sometimes. It's like, your green car and the right light bulb or the right cup that you bring is awesome, but that's not going to change collective society. And if that becomes a new form of classism, where you are not the other person, you are unwittingly, and I'm saying that you're doing it like as a jerk, I'm saying that you're unwittingly perpetuating that. The goal is not how do you do it, the goal is how to get somebody across the table who would never want to do that. When you do that, then you become a really powerful change agent, because you're stepping into community, you may be stepping into uncomfortable places to understand how to get them to embrace these ideas that you're espousing. So, where am I in time? Sorry. With that, I want to just jump and sit down and get off of the mic because I feel uncomfortable. But to introduce our two guests and maybe have them speak. I'm going to go with Albie first because I think he has a presentation queued up. And maybe a little bit of background on Albie. For us, I'm from Organic Farms, and we are a social enterprise in Waianae. And if you haven't heard of us already, I feel sorry for you. But I think what we really are is a nonprofit that sends kids from Waianae, which is Native Hawaiian community on Oahu, to college by having them run the daily operations of our organic farm. And now we're one of the largest organic farms in the state. I think we're largest on Oahu. And we're sending about 35 kids from Waianae to college as organic farmers. And we've done this with powerful relationships with Leeward Community College. I see a lot of Leeward folks here, Chancellor, and some students. I see some Leeward students, some Halal students as well here too. And we've also done this in partnership with University of Hawaii West Oahu, because these universities help our students get their degrees. And we don't just have them passively go to school, we're actually creating certificates on campus. So about 4 years ago, when I started 8 years ago, we were desperate to get a kid to get an associate's. But once that started clicking, then they started getting their associates, and it became like Sisyphus pushing the ball up the hill to like Sisyphus running away when the ball's kind of rolling after him. Like, what are we gonna do? They're getting their AAs. We gotta figure out where to go next. And at that same time, very serendipitously, I got a phone call from someone saying that the then Chancellor, Gene Abakuni, was talking about wanting to partner with Mao. So we went over to his office, and we began what was a 4-year conversation into what has turned into the Bachelor's of Applied Science in Sustainable Community Food Systems. And the whole time we were putting this together, the question was like, who's gonna teach this? It's part of my French, but this person has to be a badass. And we knew a lot of badasses out there, and we were trying to like feel around. But Albie was always in the periphery, and we had known of his work, especially our founders, Gary and Kukui. And we asked him. We had seen the alignment of what he was doing, the idea of agroecology and the work in sustainable community food systems, and the idea of, if this is just a conversation for the folks that are in college, that can afford college, it's gonna really miss the mark. Where are people of color, where's indigenous knowledge, where are lower income communities in this conversation, how are we expanding the reach? And that was really what his passion was. So for some weird reason, he decided to jump in the boat with us. And flew his family over and I don't know, you could always tap out to it. Don't feel like you're stuck here with this. He's been very quickly been a powerful agent of change, and he's helped to really promote this idea and get into places that we couldn't as community to help bring community there. For example, we're going to 2 weeks from now, we're going to be speaking at Harvard. Like, these are the types of circles he's allowed us to access as Native people, and we're trying to help him access indigenous thought in ways that he gave me this term that I love. I think it's powerful. It's the meeting of wisdoms, to see all wisdoms come together, to test their fit for that place, and then jump in. Then after that, I'm going to introduce Kevin Chang, and Kevin Chang is the executive director of Kua Aina-based, and I don't want to speak exactly about what they do, I might get yelled at, but in essence, they help community practitioners across the state who have a practice of ancestral practice they're still perpetuating, that still holds the seeds of the ancestral science that sustained us and keep it going. Help them navigate Western systems so they can eventually move into the space of being able to have agency in their own communities, to have co-management strategies with the state. Now, I asked him to talk a little bit about some of the successes he's seen as a networked organization, helping practitioners get agency, be able to intersect with the state to get their practices implemented. These inherently sustainable practices recognized for their values, that these practitioners can move back into being leaders and having executive control to a certain extent of their communities. So without further ado, I'm gonna just kick it over to Albie, and maybe you can just jump in first. Mahalo.
Aloha mai kako. All right, what I would like to do first, a little intro on myself is Albie Miles, professor in sustainable community food systems at UHWO. I did my PhD work at UC Berkeley. I'm trained as a population and community ecologist, but I'm also interested in the political economy of food and agricultural systems. As Kamu said, I really jumped at the chance to come to UHWO because as an academic, surveying the scene in terms of academic jobs, I saw that there's a lot of lip service that's given to engagement with community, and my potential role at UHWO, there was structured into that academic position, a meaningful relationship with the Native Hawaiian community. So I jumped at the chance to work with this group of amazing activists and scholars. So what I want to do here is provide you with a bit of an overview of some of the content that I engage my students in the Sustainable Community Food Systems program, and also help us better understand the context in which we exist as an island state, and some of the key, what I consider to be the most pressing issues in food and agriculture that we need to address and that I attempt to address with my students. I think that we're moving toward a model of the integration of Western empirical sciences and indigenous science and practice, and I think that that holds promise for a model for the state of Hawaii and the nation. All right, so I drink a lot of coffee and I talk a little fast, so you'll have to bear with me. Okay, so first off, agriculture is the #1 global driver of environmental change. Agriculture impacts everything from global climate change to biodiversity conservation and loss, to eutrophication of aquatic, fresh, and marine ecosystems, to pesticide exposure, to non-target organisms, whether they're human beings or non-human beings. What we do in agriculture will have an outsized influence on global environmental quality and human health. So how we conduct agriculture will determine how sustainable and socially equitable the future is. Here in Hawaii, as many of you already know, we have incredibly high rates of chronic illness in the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community. That's analogous to most other marginalized communities of color around the United States and other parts of the world, and for similar historical reasons. We also know that the nature of the food environment, the food retail environment that many people are surrounded by, can have a profound impact on chronic illness or well-being. We here in Hawaii, as many people have repeatedly heard in the media and different academic publications, as we are incredibly geographically isolated and food import dependent, importing an estimated 90% of our food, which raises some questions around the vulnerability to statewide food insecurity, and the likelihood of some type of environmental disruption or economic disruption. And we know that global climate change is already having impacts on global food prices, and so we, as an isolated population with already extremely high food prices, we could suffer increased exposure to highly fluctuating food prices that are going to disproportionately impact low-income communities here in Hawaii. Importantly, I think it's key to point out that we have only a few sectors that dominate the Hawaiian economy, and that agriculture represents, particularly sustainable agriculture, represents an important opportunity to grow the local economy. Okay, so I want to talk about some of the key issues, just give you an overview of some of the content that I address in my courses at West Oahu. So this is a snapshot of eutrophication, the nutrient enrichment of marine ecosystems around the world. Everywhere where you see one of those dots, that's a major hypoxic zone. It's been eutrophied primarily because of the runoff from agriculture. We use a lot of highly concentrated synthetic chemical fertilizers that eventually make their way into freshwater and marine ecosystems, having a profound negative impact on marine water quality and biodiversity. The materials that we're using in agriculture can boost productivity, there's no doubt about it, but it also poses significant environmental quality and human health risk. And now epidemiological literature is showing that if you live within a 1-mile radius of where organophosphate pesticides are being used, it poses a significant risk to the cognitive development of young children. So this has been borne out in repeated epidemiological studies showing this trend. And so the materials that we're using in modern agriculture, though they are essential in some ways in terms of protecting crops, they also pose a significant environmental quality and human health risk, and we need to take that into account. The materials that we also use in order to control pests and pathogens in agriculture also in many ways are ecologically dysfunctional. This image on the left shows the development of genetic resistance to pesticides. It's been documented literally hundreds of times over and over again, and we should understand that that is an inevitable outcome because of our understanding of evolution by natural selection. When we expose a population of organisms to a toxin, there's going to be some portion of that population that has an innate genetic makeup that makes it resistant to exposure. That characteristic will be amplified in subsequent generations to the point where eventually the population will no longer be susceptible to that material. And then you have a genetically resistant variant of that pest population. It's been documented over and over again. What is the grower's response? Increase the frequency or the application rate of the materials. Okay? This is frequently referred to as the pesticide treadmill. These are things that we should anticipate as a result of the way that we design modern agricultural systems as monocultures. They are ecologically dysfunctional agricultural ecosystems. At the same time, pointing to the image on the right, is the materials that we use in modern agriculture in terms of pesticides, they're generally understood as broad spectrum, meaning they are not targeted. They will wipe out the beneficial organisms, meaning the predators and parasitoids of pests that could otherwise, if you had a healthy population of them, could keep pest organisms in check. And we have the ability to design agroecosystems in order to enhance populations of beneficial organisms and at the same time reduce the likelihood of pest outbreaks. So this is an issue of understanding of ecology rather than a continued dependence on some of these materials. We should also know that agriculture constitutes one of the greatest producers of global greenhouse gas emissions. It's estimated 25 and as high as 35% of total global greenhouse gas emissions comes from agriculture. That is an enormous contribution. So again, how we conduct agriculture, the types of farming systems that we have, the degree to which we're shipping commodities around the globe, that tells us how much embodied energy and therefore fossil fuels and carbon emissions are associated with the foods that we consume. The food system is broken in a number of other fundamental ways that I point out to my students. This is data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We have the most productive industrialized form of agriculture anywhere in the world, and still we have nearly 50 million people who are food insecure in the United States of America. Ironically, I will point out that it was Earl Butz, Richard Nixon's Department of Ag secretary, who pointed out that if we actually transition to a more organic form of agriculture, you would have to choose which 50 million people go food insecure or go hungry. So despite the fact that we transition to a very intensive industrial form of agriculture, we still have numbers like this in terms of the people who have a difficult time accessing adequate amounts of food. These are problems of poverty. They're also problems with the food system. Here in Hawaii, as many of you have read this study, this is coming out of the medical school here, is we have incredibly high rates of chronic illness in the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander population. This is a food system problem. It's also a problem of poverty. It's also a problem of economic marginalization, but it's also an issue of the nature of the food system in which the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander population live. We have alternatives, though. It's important to understand that we can take control of our food system. We can direct it in ways that meet specific targets in terms of economic well-being, in terms of human health, and ecological sustainability. So this idea of sustainable community food systems is the communities actually taking control of the food system, having influence on public policy and directing the food system toward meeting specific goals of ecological sustainability and social equity. Okay, some of the goals. When we talk about a sustainable community food system, this is actually something that scholars have put a fair amount of time into. This is not something that I'm making up as a new professor at West Oahu. This is something that people who have been focusing on agroecology and sustainable food systems have been articulating for some time. And some of the key principles are simply people having access to adequate amounts of food at all times, that is safe and nutritious, that a sustainable community food system is based on a stable base of family farms using ecologically based farming practices, that it is grounded in marketing practices that create more direct links between farmers and consumers, that we have local economies and businesses that create jobs and recirculate financial capital in the local economy. Living and working conditions of agricultural workers are such that they can actually afford to live in the communities in which they work and have access to decent amounts of food. And importantly, here in Hawaii, we're talking about ideas of local and cultural economic self-determination. These are not radical ideas. Every single administration over the last few decades have been talking about the idea and the need for increased amount of food self-sufficiency for Hawaii for a range of reasons, whether they're economic, food security, and others. So these are not radical ideas that we're advancing through this program. I want to spend a few minutes talking about other important justifications for this sustainable community food system. So I provided you with a little bit of detail on what are some of the social and environmental issues in modern agriculture, why we structure the way that we have structured the Sustainable Community Food Systems program is because what I just provided you with is a fairly complex set of social and ecological factors that have shaped the food system that we have. Training somebody to be just a soil scientist or just a rural sociologist is, I believe, inadequate in terms of understanding the food and agricultural system in which we exist. And so, by design, the Sustainable Community Food Systems program is geared toward training people to be thinkers of systems, to how to analyze systems. So the food and agricultural system is a complex socio-ecological system, and we need to be training people in such a way. So our intention is not to train people, say, to be just soil scientists. Those soil science is a key part of it, but we want to train people to think critically and systemically about the food system and to take this understanding and this framework of ecological sustainability and social equity in the food system to any work that they do, whether they go into production agriculture or policy making or education or research. Okay. As I mentioned, the emphasis on agriculture is socio-ecological systems. Integral to the Sustainable Community Food Systems program is a strong emphasis on problem-based and experiential and hands-on learning. I, as a learner, believe that I learn best through hands-on experience, through doing things with my mentors and analyzing things and integrating theory with practice. And that is another important element to the Sustainable Community Food Systems. The idea of praxis is central to everything that we do in this program, where we teach lectures in the class, and then we go out into the laboratory, we go out into the field, and help the students integrate the theoretical elements that we cover in the classroom with the applied and the hands-on learning. So let me provide you with a few details about this program so you get a better sense of what the content is. This is the basic core curriculum. I know it's a lot of information. This is the core curriculum, and I'll just quickly run through it and then give you a sense of what the rest of the curriculum is like as we take it from a concentration and build it out toward a full undergraduate degree program. So all students are required to take basic biology courses so that they understand global environmental issues from an ecological perspective. This SCFS 300, the second bullet point, that's a historical analysis of the food system of Hawaii. We start with the Native Hawaiian Health Report with all the chronic illness or health disparities in the Native Hawaiian community, and I take them through a historical analysis of the food system of Hawaii to help explain how we got from a pre-contact society that was indefinitely sustainable and maintained a very high population density, almost equivalent to today, and now we have a marginalized community with extremely high rates of chronic illness. That's agriculture's impact in Hawaii, and a particular kind of agriculture in Hawaii that has led to these health disparities and health outcomes. SCFS 310, agroecology, that's my particular field. I'm trained as an ecologist who studies agriculture. That's a purely biophysical science class where I take students through the most cutting-edge, peer-reviewed scientific literature. I have them read articles out of Nature and Science magazine that focus on sustainable and alternative agriculture, so we know what the scientific literature says about these farming systems. Theory and practice of sustainable agriculture, that's a hands-on horticulture class where we take students out into the field after discussing the theoretical elements in class. We teach a politics of food class. Again, I mentioned this is an interdisciplinary program, and so we integrate both the natural sciences and the social sciences into it. Politics of food is essentially a political economy of agriculture. Why is the national food system the way that it is? And what does politics and money and public policy have to do with the nature of the food system that we see ourselves embedded in? SCFS 485, agriculture, food, and human values. The things that I'm talking about are obviously value-laden. Ethics plays an important role in the nature of our food system. And so what I do with my students is I take them through a very thorough and rigorous analysis of the underlying human values that are implicit or explicit in conventional forms of food and agriculture organization and alternatives. We interrogate such things as animal rights and the ethics of pollution and the ethics of such things as transgenic manipulation of plant genomes. These are issues that they have to take on and come to clarity in and of themselves. The last two, SCFS 490 and ASPC 490X, those are practicum courses where after they've done some of the lower division courses, they are then placed in a organization that's focused on food system change, and another where they're working on some type of farm of their choosing to get further hands-on experience working with a local grower. Okay, I know I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to show a few additional details. These are courses that are in development right now, some of which are now being offered in the next few semesters. I just want to point out a couple of classes. Native Planters in Old Hawaii and Indigenous Natural Resource Management. Important to this program is the integration of Western empirical sciences with Indigenous science and practice. So I feel that there is a meaningful dialogue happening between myself and the Native Hawaiian community, and our pathway forward in terms of achieving sustainability in the food and agricultural system will be drawing extensively from the knowledge of the Native Hawaiian people and their traditional farming systems. Just to give you a brief sense of how we do experiential and hands-on learning through this program, the Chancellor, former Chancellor Freitas, gave the student body a half acre in the center of the campus, and we turned it from this, which was a peely grass field left over after the construction. And in a 2-year time period, through classes and weekend workshops, we transformed this space into a productive garden. We built a beautiful hale with the support of a number of community members from Oahu and Maui. And today, we have a half-acre organic site that's incredibly productive. It's all organic. We don't use any kind of synthetic chemical materials in this garden at all. So the intention is to provide a demonstration of how we can use ecologically based practices in order to produce food in a way that is both productive and sustains environmental quality and human health. We also take students out into the field to show them how indigenous cropping systems function and to learn from practitioners. I'm trained with a particular disciplinary emphasis, but farmers and practitioners have a great deal to offer my students. We also do hands-on learning in different ways. We analyze the food system in different ways. So both the production side is very important. We have to understand what constitutes experientially, what constitutes a sustainable form of agriculture. I believe that's super important. We also need to understand the structures of the food system and how they can serve as impediments to achieving social equity and ecological sustainability. So I'm working with colleagues across Oahu, particularly Monique Marinesco, in developing a food system assessment using GIS analysis, and I have my students involved in all aspects of it. So we're mapping agricultural land. We're looking at land ownership. Very interesting in terms of a history of Hawaii, just in this one image. I think you can learn a tremendous amount of Hawaiian history just looking at this single image that we've generated. You can look at a quick history and present study of who controls agricultural land on Oahu from a simple graphical analysis. So we also look at such things as grocery and convenience stores, and where do we see a concentration of grocery and convenience stores, and what kind of implications does it have for human health? So we break it down. We look at Waianae. We see that there's about 50% concentration of convenience stores in West Oahu. We look at Ewa, about 35%. We go to other parts of the island, and we see, on average, much lower rates of convenience stores. Does that have an impact on human health? Potentially so. I send my students out into these convenience stores and grocery stores to assess what's on the shelves so that they again have an experiential understanding of what the food environment is constituted by. And if somebody is on a limited income, how are they going to put together a meal, a healthy meal for their family on a limited income when you see the offerings on the left-hand side and you see very few of the offerings on the right-hand side? Okay, so I'm just going to end here. I just want to say that in addition to this undergraduate degree program, West Oahu has their hands in a number of important initiatives that I want to bring your attention to. We're doing research again with our students where we're studying the food security status of our West Oahu students. We're doing a needs assessment of farmers across the state of Hawaii. We're starting a UH system-wide speaker series on the future of food and agriculture in Hawaii that I would invite you to. And we're hoping at some point in the future to advance what we're calling the Hawaiian Center for Sustainable Community Food Systems, which would be a multidisciplinary education center for West Oahu. And then lastly, if you're interested in hands-on and experiential sustainable agriculture education, Kamuela and I and a number of people from Ma'o and the UH system are going to UC Santa Cruz this summer, where I'm organizing with my colleagues at Berkeley and Stanford, UC Davis, the next National Sustainable Agriculture Education Conference, and that's going to happen in late July of 2016. And it profiles programs very similar to the SCFS program at West Oahu. So I'll end there. Thank you very much.
So mahalo, Albie. I just wanted to segue from Albie to Kevin, but quickly you can see why we asked Albie to come. I call him Keone Ana, because it helps us, the idea of like Kamuela with lash cannons to canoes, and they gave him a flanking opportunity. And I think this idea though of like a community organization bringing Albie down It's as much as how is the university ready to collaborate, but also how is community ready to collaborate. I think it's a 50-50, and I think we've had to develop our capacity to be at the table, to create a degree and to bring a professor down to run it with us. The second thing I want to share, like the students doing this program are going to be students coming from Waina, from Eba, from all those other communities that were dispossessed by industrial food system, whether as Native Hawaiians or as recent migrants are brought over and then left to hang out and dry when the plantations moved to Philippines and left in the hinterlands. So this idea of restoring the food system knowledge to these communities and having them come through as the drivers is a powerful idea on our end. And the last part too is like Uncle Francis Sinesi was a really powerful Hale builder. He built the Hale at West Oahu, and he's part of the KUA network that Kevin represents. So this intersect of what we were trying to do on the ground there, but having networked organizations that help us engage practitioner communities, because the knowledge that students are getting, it really helps to reconcile, not just, I mean, you know what your ancestors did, but you have a vague understanding of what happened to you, which is very angry at points, but I think this critical analysis of what happened and language and structures and frameworks are really important to the next step of how do you do something about it to restore ancestral practice in contemporary structures. And I call that term indigenization, is when you repurpose the contemporary structures to be vehicles for ancestral responsibilities. I think that's kind of what I love about KUA and the work that they're doing. And people within the KUA network are probably the most powerful people in Hawaii that have yet to be acknowledged. I think the work that Kevin is doing to work with them to get to that point is probably some of the most fundamental work going on right now. So without further ado, I want to just kick it over to Kevin and have him talk a little bit.
Okay, how do I set this thing on? Just press the arrow. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Chang. I was born and raised on this island. I grew up in Kahalu'u on the other side. My concept of sustainability used to be, when I was here at the University of Hawaii, two concepts. But one was, while I was here, I was on the football team. So the question was, can a moped sustain 300-pound linemen from the athletic complex to the building over here where they teach languages? And I can assure you it does. And I think it may still work today. I'm the executive director of an organization called Aina Ulu Awamo, which means grassroots, growing through shared responsibility, a name partly dreamed up on a phone call and a barbecue at Kamuela's house about 4 years ago. Our acronym KUA means backbone. We primarily work in rural and native Hawaiian communities, facilitating networks of grassroots, community-based natural resource management efforts. I'm not Hawaiian, I'm Chinese-Irish, and that's where my other view of sustainability comes from. I'm a descendant of bootleggers and boxers. My great-grandfather here was the first boxing kind of promoter and coach here in the Chinese community in Hawaii. And my ancestors, at least the name on my Scotch and Irish side, can be seen in that movie Tombstone. And we smoked dope with the Chinese, and we went around and robbed banks, yeah? So sustainability for me is really, how many cracks can you take? That's what I think of sustainability is. I think of boxing and how much can you handle. So I don't always see that word as a positive term necessarily. We like to focus on abundance, and a word we often use is aina momona, it's like the fat lands and the lands that feed us. So anyway. So I was raised in Kahalu'u, and so that sort of sets the tone for a lot of the work I do. A song that was sort of the soundtrack of my childhood was a song called Ku'uhome o Kahalu, my beloved home Kahalu'u. And there was a phrase in that song that says, change is a strange thing, it cannot be denied. It will help you find yourself or make you lose your pride. And you see it in urban areas, but I think if you go to rural areas, you see community members, and especially in our Hawaiian community, struggling with either pride or despair. And when we embrace despair, we start to self-destruct. But we also, amidst this change and adjusting to change, we can also find the pride in who we are and how we can move forward. And so this song is sort of this phrase is sort of a metaphor for kind of two types of people we're kind of struggling with being. We can be people who implode, or we can be people who move forward and make a better world for our children. So these are the people I work with. And they believe that they can look back to who they were and who they are and to the ways of their ancestors to move our state forward. And to me, that's the best definition of self-governance. It's not so much a piece of paper or a kind of organizational structure, but it's a feeling of power of your destiny, and that's where we start in our work. And a wave is coming, and I believe our communities are the leaders of that wave. The people we call uncle, auntie, the people we see every day, talking about who we are and who we were. And I think there's something happening in the globe. Sometimes we can be very provincial and look only in our little communities. And sort of our work, the work of my organization, is we bring communities together so that they can see each other and they can feel that they're not alone, and they're in a broader context. And if they spend enough time together, they can find ways to transform that context. And there's a reaction throughout the world, I think, going on towards what we think of as centralized governance. Not to say that it's not important, but we also need to feel a sense of governance over ourselves and our places. And I think it's not just happening in Hawaii, it's happening around the world. Okay, what was I going to say next? Oh, and I wanted to add, just that I thought of this yesterday, when I'm talking about a change that's going on around the world. I was reading a paper yesterday, and a little obituary about this guy named Harry Saunders, who was a peace negotiator who worked in Israel and other places, helping communities with great tension within itself try to overcome and get through some of their issues. And before his death, I think he wrote a book where he said that we're now in the citizen century, where issues become increasingly complex and governments become increasingly incapable of addressing those issues alone. And those gaps open up, and those gaps will have to generally be filled by citizens and civic society. And so that's happening everywhere. And even Albie's talk and discussion is about that gap. And the gap that our folks see is that our state and our community needs to return to some of our place-based knowledge, our place-based skills, and those values that will help us rebuild our community. So people talk about the work we do as environmental work, but I see it as community building. And so I forgot to really lay out what we do. So we facilitate networks of grassroots community-based natural resource management. We have 3 networks. We were called into existence by our eldest network, which is a group called UHWO, which means Move Forward Together. They have been gathering for 14 years now. About 4 years ago, when a woman named Debbie Goinsmith, who was sort of finding ways to keep them together for over 10 years on her own, really, had to leave. And so she said, before I leave, do you want this to continue? And she said, yes. And then they told her, we want you to create an organization that will sustain our dialogue beyond this 10 years so that we can continue to be together, to find the trust, and to find common ground to move forward together on. And so UHWO was the progenitor of our organization. UHWO really was called together by a man named Mac Poipoi, who's sort of seen as the godfather of community-based natural resource management and the marine environment on Molokai. In the last 3-4 years, we've also taken on facilitating a group called Hui Malama Loku'i'a. It's a group of about 40 different fish pond restoration projects statewide. And our newest and youngest group is actually our eldest group because it's mostly kupunas talking about their experience and knowledge of limu. And we're hoping that that conversation moves towards perpetuating and restoring limu to the places where we no longer see it. And so, really, they're looking back at our past to move forward, our place-based vision. And I think this is a good thing, like I said, and I think this is a trend that's happening. It's not just happening in Hawaii, but it's around the world. And so we bring people together to sustain the dialogue, to build hearts and minds. So they spend time talking about who they are, they spend time talking about where they're from, and then they go out to a community and they help heal the land of that community. And they talk more about that. Pretty soon they start talking about things that they thought were private issues. You know, I had a problem, I had a problem with what's happening in my community. And so I just decided to stand up. I went into that state park and I rebuilt the lo'i. And when I did that, 10 other people showed up. And then we did it another time and 20 other people showed up. And then you know what? We sat around and we had a barbecue and we found out we feel the same. And when we feel the same, we started to think, what can we do to make this better? And so that's really all we do. We just create this sustained dialogue so our communities can move forward together. This is just pictures of some of what we do. We meet in air-conditioned rooms and draft up documents. We go out and weave nets and we catch fish.
You're on the wrong one, yeah.
Oh, sorry. This one. We engage in citizen science. We document traditional knowledge. And it's kind of cyclical. It's ongoing. It continues. Yeah. Matt wanted me to just touch on this picture here is our latest activities is that our groups are no longer just talking and learning. They're doing, yeah? They have a strategic plan of doing things. Not planning, not visioning, not just talking. They're moving forward. And so this is a picture from Haena, where the Hawaiian community in Haena got together, and based on a law that's been in existence for 20 years and we have done nothing about it, they have worked for 20 years to create rules for their fishery. Rules that don't exclude anyone, but say that if you're going to fish in our area, please fish with the values of our place. Please respect our need to have this place be plentiful for our children. And that's what's happening now. And it seems to be happening mostly in the marine environment, but I think it's going to expand up to the mountains and throughout our state. So lastly, I just wanted to close with, there's a story in, I guess it's Buddhist literature, and I'm not a Buddhist, but I've heard different manifestations of it. But it's about a rich man who had an abundance of resources, and he had a friend who was a beggar. He grew up with this friend, and so this rich man traveled the world, and he would come home now and then. And whenever he come home, he see his friend who's begging in the street, yeah? And so he says, you know what? I'm home for 2 weeks. Why don't you crash on my couch? And you have a roof over your head while I'm here. And one night while the beggar is sleeping, he takes a ruby, a jewel, and he puts it in the beggar's pocket. And then he leaves the next day to go wherever he goes, wherever he travels. And then he comes back 10 years later, and he sees his friend is still on the street. And he says, what are you doing on the street? You know, I put a jewel in your pocket. And this person, this beggar, realized he opened up his jacket and the jewel was in his pocket all this time. So he never knew the wealth and riches that he had. He never knew the promise that he held. And so I guess what we're talking about today is your university is also a jewel in our community. And so how are you going to help this trend in serving our communities and making us better citizens of this place? Mahalo.
So with the time we have left, I just wanted to really echo Kevin's sentiment. Moving forward, we hope that this panel was able to provide a an update of what's going on in communities that is intersecting with the university system in real meaningful ways. But B, you get a clarion call to enter community. And we figured since that was something that was being put out to a kauoha, like an order, that this is at least some ways to look at how that's being done and how that's being done on a horizontal plane versus a vertical one, where you're coming in as experts, but actually you're coming in as peers and allies. And I think that peer-to-peer mentoring network approach is a really powerful one, and I think especially with Albie's case, in Albie's case, you can see the clear value of having a college degree attached to Y&I that's teaching students these real critical analysis and pushing them up into real leadership positions, hopefully after they graduate. But it's where the community ends and the college begins is kind of blurry. And I think that's freaking awesome. I think that's the type of dynamic that you'd want to have in play. It's called shared risk. It's like you're not there to do a report and leave, which is what communities push back at, which hopefully is no longer the trend. It's more like I'm going to be here in a sustained way with you because our fates are intrinsically linked. And to see how we've done that, I think, Albie was asked because he had value. And Kevin and them were asked because of the value that they show and the skill sets that they have. And to really reinforce that everyone has that jewel, like Kevin says, to bring to this conversation, yeah. And sometimes your degree or your grant or whatever it is blurs that to you, and the people just become projects. But I think if today's conversation moving forward about what to do next for the next 2 days is something you want to do and then forget, really, not just be bound by those rules, but move into the spirit of what the value of university system is to communities and what's the community's value to university, and that being understood explicitly and then captured and programmatized, I think our time here was well spent. So on behalf of everybody sitting at the table, mahalo nui for you guys' patience and for all the hard work you're going to be doing the next couple of days. Mahalo.
Oh, I just wanted to note that one of the researchers that works with our community has a poster today. Her name is Emily. So check out what she's trying to do. She's trying to help our communities figure out how they can measure what they want to see in their place. Mahalo.
Any last words?
No, thank you very much.
Guys, we actually got like about 10 minutes left for,
Oh.
we'd probably take 1 or 2 questions. And there's a mic in the middle of the room. So to prevent a stampede to the microphone, does anyone have any burning questions for the panel? Yes, please, can I invite you to the microphone? And while Gordine is making her way there, ways that you can engage with these organizations. So Albie has a working day once a month? When is that?
It's about every other week at West Oahu. We have what we call weekend work parties, where we invite the community to the UH West Oahu Student Organic Garden, and we engage people in a range of activities, from developing the garden further, building compost piles, planting things, harvesting things. So,
Great, and your garden manager's here. Hashi, can you stand up so the group can see you? So if you stand up again so everybody sees you, please stand up. So if you guys want to engage at the work party, go see Tasha. Ma'o Farms buy Ma'o greens, very delicious. You're supporting incredible work. And Kua, that's one of those circles that you're invited into. But you can find Kevin third Thursdays at playing with his band Kupa Aina at the Kava Bar on Montserrat Avenue. So avenues to engage. Anyway, Gordine, go ahead, your question.
So my question is, I'm from UH College, and so the UH Manoa system, right, it supports you. How, and we live in Hawaii, Nei meaning all of the islands, so how can the UH Manoa systems help to support the rest of us that live on other islands?
go ahead, you can start with that.
My response to that is it's something that we're trying to do as an organization. That's why I tend to do speaking engagements is to maybe empower the community to engage the university system. And I think that's a real powerful way. Like the networks of KUA have people on the ground that can use some resources and begin to start that conversation first. I think, at least from the community's perspective, I think it's on our end how we have to step up and ask the university to engage us. And there may be ways that community groups, if you do some like an environmental scan, if you can say that, to Maui, organizations that may want to have that kind of bridging, go and meet with them and start to figure out how to build that relationship in ways that make sense for the community. I think that's the first step too. It also puts the community, gives community agency in the conversation, and it maybe puts the UH system folks, turns their direction to community and to look for how to be helpful, and then come back to the bigger structures and get resources. That's just a thought I have there. If anyone else has anything.
I think this is actually perhaps an opportunity to have Matt say something about system-wide work. My work is at West Oahu. I have collaborative relationships with a number of people at the different UH campuses, and I want to see much more integration across campuses. But that's principally Matt's role when it comes to helping us as a system integrate and collaborate around sustainability issues. So that happens between faculty members, it's happening at the system level in terms of the sustainability curriculum work that we're doing. But Matt, if it's all right, could we have you say just a few things about that?
Thanks, Albie. I would actually reflect that back to the group and invite you to think of that as a guiding question for your work this afternoon. And then tomorrow morning, we'll have an opportunity, and I'll share some more from the system perspective, because this is a Kako thing, and this is something that we are all figuring out, and it's too important work to lay the burden on one person's shoulders. So we are, I refer to the Office of Sustainability in the aspirational we. It has been just me up until a few short weeks ago. And if you've met Shawnee, she's been incredible in keeping me on track so that I can better serve you. But yeah, I'm gonna throw it back to Kevin, and Kevin always has profound thoughts to share, so.
I just want to add, I guess, what Gordino was asking is, when Matt asked me to speak at this, he sort of explained to me that he's sort of been tasked to, or sort of supposed to do the same kind of thing that we do. And so you guys are all here in the room today. You can talk to your university about developing a mechanism for sustained dialogue and action that allows you guys to start tying each other together more and understanding each other's issues. As long as you can't even understand on that level between each other, you're not going to be able to tackle the bigger issues. That's what I think.
Thanks, you guys. I'm actually gonna, I'm sorry, Sky. You can maybe catch them at the break. I'm gonna set everyone up to go to the poster session. But first, I just wanna explain the kalo that's in front of the table. So this is ho'okupu, or a gift from us in appreciation for their contribution. These were donated by Lion Arboretum, and they're actually native varieties. Some of these are pretty rare. You can check out the table too, but please take one and plant them when you go. I was pretty excited when I saw, but no were enough for me. So, but
No.
just, huh?
Just even greater.
No, that's yours.
Okay.
Or if you want another, you want to trade out for another. Yeah. So, just the explanation. I'm fortunate. I consider myself very fortunate in that I have been invited to work with KUA, and it's such, not to overuse the word, but it is really profound work. And I learn so much every time I go into the field to engage at that kind of work and watch guys like Kevin and Miwa and his team, because this idea of network coordination, it's kind of this emergent field of practice. So anytime as change agents and as practitioners of change agents out there, that's really what we're working with. These are the sort of tools of our trade, and we're only starting to articulate what those are as practitioners. So engaging in this kind of dialogue to try to make what is felt or intuited explicit and precise gives you more ability to use those tools with more precision and to continue to develop that toolkit. So although we may think that, how is the work at the university similar to the work at KUA, when you think of the graphics and the visuals that are in front of the stage, and if we swapped out Office of Sustainability there with KUA, and instead of institutional silos that he's coordinating or his team is coordinating, he's coordinating adaptive networks of communities, right? And the other role that KUA plays in that capacity is this role of translation, right? You think about a community working to develop community-based subsistence fishery rules, working with an agency like the DLNR, and those are literally two different languages that are being spoken, right? Now think about the tribes that we have in academia, staff, faculty, students, administration. They all speak very different languages. And oftentimes what happens when you are, has anyone ever had the experience where you're talking, you're trying to say the same thing, you're trying to communicate, but you're speaking in different languages, and you start, you repeat yourself more loudly and more slow, and then everybody gets pissed off at each other, right? And so it's this translation and advocacy role of the coordinator is key, really. And a couple key things that these guys touched on is, building community is messy, necessarily, and as part of the process, right? And how can we agree to disagree? And how can we work with what is and meet each other where we're at, right? So this afternoon we'll have an opportunity to actually work with those and to jump into the mess of building community, because that really is literally what we are doing. Thanks again, you guys. Let's just mahalo them for their time and their. So bear with me for 5 more minutes, less than 5 more minutes. I'm going to send everybody to a break. Students, if you are presenting posters, I'd invite you to come up and take your spots as I give the logistical information for the break. Please come and engage with these student projects. I've had the benefit of watching them trickle in as we launched the President's Green Initiative Awards, and there's some really incredible work that's going on out there. I wish we had the resources to award all of them. If you have ideas on that, come see me. So out the door, down the steps to the left is the restrooms. Out the back, past the registration table, the coffee, I'm sure you guys found all that. That's still outside. There's bananas and sustenance to get us through the next half hour. I'm going to ask that we be mindful of the time and prepare to be back in our seats at 11:30. I'll give a 5-minute cue. It doesn't give us much time. However, the posters will remain up on this side. So posters that are on this side after, during the lunch break, if we can, we're actually going to flip those around, or if you want to keep them displayed, you can find some space here. And that way they'll be displayed for the duration of the event, yeah? Then if you are web enabled, I'm having some issues here. We're going to see if we can get that Q&A mechanism set up over the break for the next session. So if you're web enabled, find a browser window and go to sift.ly. I'll post it up if I'm able to get it to work. But if you do that over the break, then we'll be well timed to position. So students, come up, and we'll see you back in your seats at 11:30. Thank you.
Scotty, hear me, Scotty, hear, 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 can you hear me? Can you hear me, Scotty? Hear me, Scotty, hear me, Scotty, now. Hear me, Scotty, hear me, Scotty. Pardon me? Yeah, yeah. It's on. Lacey goes on. The volume handles at our end. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now, Scotty? Can you hear me now, Scotty? Scotty, 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 Scotty. Can Scotty, can you hear me, Scotty? Scotty, can you hear me, Scotty? Good.
Alex. Grab Wes by the hand and find a seat. We can continue these conversations over lunch. Let's see. James, McKay. Grab a partner, find a seat, please. Jason, let's go. We have to sit down. Sorry, guys. I'm just calling out names that I recognize. I'm not singling you out by any means. Who else do we have? Kevin Griffin, Mark Ryan. Oh no, you're good. You take the photo. Okay, guys, we're gonna get started and go into the next portion of the event. Say again. The lost ones. Got you. Arnim's first. Okay, gang. First things first. I just want to, I forgot to acknowledge someone who has been a participant in our Sustainability Council's representing Hawaii Community College. Roberta Brashear has really been a key and driving force on that campus to get that campus sustainability plan done. So, Roberta, would you mind standing and we can acknowledge you for your work and contributions? Thank you. Is there anybody else I missed? Please don't be shy and speak up. Ryan, of course. Where are you, Ryan? Thank you. Ryan's so humble, he wasn't going to say anything. Mahalo, you guys. Okay. Denise Yoshimo. Yeah, you sneaky. Oh my gosh. I'm embarrassed. This is my fault. Denise, come on, stand up. Representing community colleges, Denise. Hey, Sandy. Sandy's there too. Oh man. Building community can be messy, right? Okay. So, there was a question at the break asking for more of a response to the question that was posed to me. And what is the role of the Office of Sustainability, and what is my response from a system-wide perspective? So, a couple thoughts on that. My role is to help you guys articulate what is needed, bring that back to executive management, and take all of the input that we get from today and all of this ongoing work and synthesize it into a coordinated system-wide strategy. Does that make sense? So we're not going to come to the end of 2 days and have a strategy on how to go forward, okay? But what we are going to have is a benefit of all of your input to inform that strategy. And that's what I mean by enhancing the sensory capacity of our leadership and improving their capacity to make decisions. So Kevin Chang actually wrote me some notes, some thoughts that I'd like to share out. First of all, he says, now I think I understand what it is that you're trying to do. Kevin and I talk often about network coordination, obviously. And so this is sort of notes from the field from someone that has deep experience rooted in community values and is dealing with, if we think we have challenging contexts to deal with, can you imagine communicating 3 statewide networks of Hawaiian practitioners and trying to figure out from a 0 resource base how to continue that work? He suggests that we articulate the need for keeping this going, for keeping these convenings going, for keeping these gatherings going, right? Conference calls and technology are great, and a great way to reduce our impact, and there's also nothing that can beat face-to-face interactions, that richness of human interaction. So let's think about that over these next couple of days. Help me to explain to executive management why this is needed, what the value is, what we want to get out of next year's summit, okay? our focus for the first year has been to figure out what the business strategy is. How are we going to essentially create mechanisms to fund this into perpetuity? Okay, where we've landed is our focus has been very laser focused on energy efficiency, because the potential returns that are available for energy efficiencies are such that that's a potential economic engine to drive all of this work. Yeah, so strategically, that's where we start. Now, we know that there's many other aspects of sustainability to address, but we start where we're at with what we have. So if we can articulate the value of this, then I can work with leadership to support it more broadly, and we can move our shared kuleana into a much broader space. Does that make sense? Okay. So this afternoon, working sessions, campus sustainability planning. You guys will be working with Patrick Thibodeau, who I'll introduce properly in a moment. And this will be an opportunity for you to share out the work that you've done in developing these plans, and to look at them, to put those in a bigger box and think about those and explore and examine those through the lens of macro trends that are affecting and impacting not only our campuses, but our home life and our communities. Then Dr. Arnhem Week, I always put an S there, I don't know why, is from Arizona State University. Early on in this work, Arnhem wrote a paper on sustainability learning competencies that was really influential in some of the curriculum coordination and sustainability curriculum development thinking. So Arnhem brings that to the table. Not only that, he brings sort of national and international perspectives on how to make the transition as an institution, so that we can look at what has worked elsewhere and take the pieces that might work for us, adapt and apply it to our unique context. And so Arnhem will be guiding the curriculum coordination, or contributing to that curriculum coordination group. And the idea with that group is to contribute your input to help us create that vision. If on February 12th in Hilo, we started with a napkin sketch, now I'm hoping to get a rough draft out of what that shared vision of, if the university knew what it knew, what could it be in terms of teaching and learning, yeah? Then we have the student leadership group, and Jessica Sevilla, our student sustainability fellow, has been working closely with Nicole Chatterson, who has deep experience working with Kupu Rise internship program, and other youth programming. And what you guys will be working on is figuring out how a statewide sustainability coalition could impact you at the campus, your community, and us as a coordinated effort. You'll be learning a little bit about the history of the coalition and thinking about what might be possible if you're able to work effectively together and have the resources to support network coordination, so that, again, I can take that input and then try to figure out the strategy of how to get more resources to you. And then last but not least, we have a working session that's focused on strategic energy management. And the general question that we're working to answer there is, what is our strategy to manage our energy more effectively, working across our internal and our external stakeholders, partners, so that we can improve our energy performance, develop that funding mechanism so that we have a viable business plan underlying our sustainability strategy, and meet our net zero mandate and the carbon neutral goals set by the Board of Regents, 2035 and 2050 respectively. So, all that being said, the information that we're about to receive from our invited speakers, and I'm sorry, Jessica Marshall, I did it again, man. Jessica Marshall, I've met recently, and her last post was at the superintendent's office at the Department of Education. And it's interesting to compare notes and see the work she's been doing there and the work that we're doing here. And Jessica is in the thick of planning for the 2017 World Youth Congress, which offers a sort of morning after cure for the post-WCC hangover that we're likely to experience in 2017. The International World Conservation Congress happens this year. It's a huge, huge event, September of this year. And the world's eyes will be upon us. And then we'll be able to continue threads of that conversation led by our youth, led by youth perspectives. And so she's going to introduce us to some of that work there. And Amy Brinker from Kamuela Schools is the sustainability manager, sort of my counterpart, I guess, over at that institution. And fingers crossed that we can get to Amy's presentation. They've done some really incredible and creative work around getting baseline information and doing it in a way where it's sort of boardroom to classroom ready. And throwing that out to help spark, we have a real operational need of how to achieve our baselines, how to get our baselines to help inform our planning. And we have limited funding resources to do that, but what we do have are a lot of other resources that we can tap into. So all this information is important to frame the context and to inform your working sessions this afternoon. So we're gonna go quick, we're gonna go intensely, take lots of notes. Each speaker may not pertain directly to the working session that you're focused in, but I guarantee you there's a thread that applies, okay? So first up, we have Dr. Albie Miles. Dr. Albie Miles. I'm on fire. Dr. Arnhem Week from the School of Sustainability at Arizona State University. Please welcome him.
Aloha, everyone. So I guess I start with saying you're not alone. And I mean this by this particular role I play here as a keynote speaker, being not part of the UH system at all, and actually being not very familiar with it, apart from studying lots and lots of documents and speaking to very lovely folks from various campuses, and having spent the last 5 days in Kauai and learned a little bit more about the Kauai Community College. What I know, though, is that there are many, many sustainability programs and universities and colleges around the country and the world in very similar positions. And everybody is struggling. Nobody has really figured it out. I come from a university where a very powerful president has coined this idea of the new American university. Michael Crow is our president, and he has pushed for it now over 10 years. And he usually appears as somebody who has all the answers. I can assure you we don't have all the answers. We have a lot of experience by now, but again, what I've seen across the country and the world is a lot of pushing for a new generation of sustainability education. So I'm here to give you some perspective from this international pool of resources we should all, I think, tap into. But at the same time, I also want to mirror that most of the things I'm presenting, you have here. You just have it, in dispersed places. And I think one of the key elements of your undertakings, from my perspective, should be to really harvest this and learn from each other as much as we from, kind of the outside and other universities would like to, support you in that learning process. I think the key, one of the key elements I learned in my academic career and a lot of participatory research and community engagement we are doing is don't start with strategies. I appreciate very much the question about how do we do that now. But first you need to somewhat create the vision where you want to go. And so Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who wrote The Little Prince, has this really strong saying, and I think it applies especially to islands and Hawaii. I think this idea of you need to create the vision first before you build a ship. And I think so. I mean this very seriously, not just daydreaming about what Hawaii and the islands could be, but seriously visioning. And so what I think is very important, even before we start thinking about particular programs or study abroad or the worldwide voyage or concentrations in sustainability and all the wonderful things we want to discuss more, in particular in the curriculum development stream this afternoon, is to really reinvent and reimagining what Hawaii, the islands individually and collectively could be. We need to reconsider what mobility actually means. And I think this is not particular to this place. I think it's very relevant for everywhere in the world. We are obsessed with bringing people from A to B. We give very little thought, why are people so desperate about getting from A to B? in very small scale environments when it's just about the daily commuting. But also, obviously in large scale, thinking about the tourism industry of Hawaii, right? Rethinking what actually mobility means and learning from innovative solutions when it comes to mobility is, I think, one of the challenges. Housing sector, right? How we can use actually local materials. The tiny house movement, I think, is a great way to think about stuff and how much space we actually need and what we think we are without our wealth and the things we possess, instead of asking the question, who are we without that, and who are we collectively too, right? So space in a very rich sense to reimagine. I love the idea of embracing a place, in particular its climate. Coming from Arizona, we are just, again, obsessed with artificially creating an environment we think is more healthy and conducive to what we are doing. So everything is basically running on air condition, which is a highly artificial environment. It doesn't embrace the place. It's not really healthy. It's very energy intense. It really, with a car-driven community at the same time, we don't really have connections to people. So we need to reconsider all of this. And again, I'm just telling you some of the stories from observations I'm making here, but I really refer to a lot of other places I've been to, not really embracing the space and the location we're living in. The really interesting thing is with all of these pictures is that they are from here. So there's a famous saying in future studies that the future is already here. It's just unequally distributed. And so I wanted to coin this, somewhat differently and say the vision is already here. You see all these pockets of changes already all over the islands. What we haven't done yet is really adopting, embracing, appreciating, scaling, transferring that. And what we heard from our panel before, it's amazing work. The vision of creating actually a healthy, intensive organic food system for the islands that would reverse the trend from 90% of imported food to 90% of food produced here is an amazing idea, but it also has already good grounds in reality. There are pilot projects, there are farms already out there. It's our task to think about how can we learn, transform, transfer, and scale. Now, a key part of this is how we teach. And education needs to be at the core of that vision. And again, I think we need to think about education in very different ways. And again, I'm very pleased to follow the first panel where a lot of community-based, participatory, engaged, action teaching was alluded to. So these are kind of examples from around the world. Again, you're not alone. You're not on this journey as the only people trying to do education in a more meaningful way. A lot of people are trying to do this, and I think if we really merge all of this knowledge and experience, we can learn this together. Now let me talk about constructing a vision for sustainability education in 3 different streams. I want to briefly talk about principles. I then want to put it on the ground and say, so what are the tangible ideas on the ground? How does a great vision in terms of principles translate into something that is happening in or outside the classroom, but in the everyday reality of faculty, students, and staff? And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about institutional structures, what we learned along the way of how we can make some of this change happen. So the guiding principles, and I'm just picking some of them, and this afternoon we have more time to delve more into the question of what are some of the guiding principles, and we have now, the University of Hawaii system has executive kind of orders and policies and all sorts of things, but the question is still, are these principles embraced? What we have done over the last 7-8 years is we have started to reimagine sustainability education through the lens of competencies that are not specific to any particular topic. And I let this sink in a little bit, because we are just often, just driven by the idea everybody needs to know about, and then comes water, or energy, or ecology. And then often we are creating these boundaries of saying, our program is about, food or energy or water. And this is all good if there is some openness to connect to all the other sustainability efforts. And that was basically the spirit behind this concept. We said it's about thinking and doing styles. It's not so much about content. You can place into these competencies all the content you want to place into them. Again, if you work on food or water or energy, it doesn't matter. You still need to think about systems. You need to train students, and students need to adopt the idea of complex systems. Albie spoke about, complex food systems, right? But you can say complex energy systems, complex systems that pertain to water, complex systems of community relationships, health, education, and so forth, right? Systems thinking being one of the core competencies of sustainability. Now, everybody nowadays agrees with systems are really important. I want to briefly allude to the other competencies which are less often emphasized but really critical. Futures thinking. We need to really train to be creative about the future, think in structured ways, and really be the innovators and strong imaginaries of the future. The normative competence is very relevant when it comes to different values and preferences. We just had yesterday a discussion about values in indigenous communities and how do we harvest them and what does it actually mean and what community do we embrace. That has a lot to do with literacy in different value systems. Our students should be capable of navigating these different value and preference systems. And at the end of the day, it's about doing things. So the strategic, action-oriented knowledge. How do you actually make change happen? How do you overcome barriers? This is not trivial. It's actually something that can be taught, and not just saying, okay, we need a new policy or a new tax, but really being smart with limited resources to bring about change. So these were kind of the 4 core competencies, and then we thought there's obviously a lot of interpersonal competence, professional competence, communication, stakeholder engagement, teamwork, and so forth that is critical too. All of this was inspired by the idea of creating change agents and problem solvers of the next generation. So this could be one of the guiding principles to say, okay, we are not creating boundaries through content. We are open to say whatever program we're designing would be, kind of supported by the idea of these competencies so that we have a dialogue, a constructive dialogue across all the different programs and sustainability endeavors. The second key principle, I think, could be quite inspirational, and again, this is nothing that is unique, it's actually widely shared, is this idea of real-world solutions learning. We have still done a lot of work that is focusing on problems, analyzing problems. A lot of our students are actually leaving sustainability programs across the country and the world being frustrated. And they don't want to do anything in sustainability because they were only trained in understanding and analyzing problems, instead of really learning about solutions and thinking through what this actually means, not only understanding them, but to have 3 different modes there. This understanding, experiencing, and experimenting. And again, I think that resonated with the previous panel. It's not just in the classroom. You need to experience solutions, and then you need to get some room to experiment with them. So this could be another principle that could guide some of the programs and efforts we are doing. And the final one is this idea of cross-cultural sustainability education on a more kind of local, regional level, like here across the islands, but then also internationally. And I think this is primarily the idea also to really adopt the unique features of what sustainability means in this context here. So that is fairly abstract, but it can guide a lot of different efforts, irrespective in which program or on which campus you are. So let me translate some of this into tangible ideas, what this actually could mean on the individual program or course level. And there are tons of different ideas we have been discussing over the last several weeks about minors and certificate programs and faculty trainings and so on and so on. And if you're interested in learning more about this afternoon and tomorrow, we have more time to go into this. I just want to highlight two elements. One is this UH-wide sustainability minor. You have now a long list of S-designated courses, so your S designation has already made a lot of progress in this direction. Now it's really, pulling it together and creating this kind of almost university system-wide minor that would allow, again, maybe very different constellations and compositions of courses to create different profiles. But the idea of somewhat a signature university-wide program that wouldn't take too much additional effort because you have already done a lot of the legwork. And I think it would create quite a kind of broader community and bring, students together and faculty together on a different level. This is something in all of the things I've seen at different programs in sustainability is the most powerful are the ones that are not limited to campuses. So this is a teacher's academy, and it's not only about the future teachers, it's also about the ones that are currently teaching in our high schools and middle schools. So a program that would really link the university, link the campuses to the communities more strongly and say, if we really believe sustainability is a societal endeavor, it's great that we teach our students, but we need to reach out and think about what are we, what can we offer to the teachers in all the schools we currently have to move on in sustainability. Again, all of the things I'm presenting here, there are examples around the world. So if you want to learn more about this, you don't have to invent all of this. And in fact, some of this is already happening here in the system too. So I will talk a little bit about how you can learn from other places in a little bit. The second element I mentioned is the solution learning, real-world settings, embedded in communities instead of in classrooms. And again, lots and lots of ideas that we have started discussing. But I would just want to highlight again 2 different ones. There's currently a large push worldwide, and particularly in the United States, about the so-called food, water, energy nexus. All of a sudden, the National Science Foundation realized, these are not independent systems. We love disciplinary research, but by the way, the challenges are cutting across all of these sectors, so we might want to catch up with the reality and try to build some capacity in these directions. So I think Hawaii is uniquely positioned to take full ownership in this direction and build a really strong program and capacity in that. And really at this interface between academic university environments and communities. Because the food we heard in the previous panel, but when it comes to energy, being aggressive on that end, the water side of things, obviously very closely linked to both of these, energy as well as food. There are a variety of really strong ideas currently percolating in the global sustainability education community that you can be a major part of. The Sustainability Livelihoods program is something that is coming up more and more, and I know that there are lots of thinking currently going on here as well. And it's again, from my perspective, something where we need to say, what can we offer outside the universities? What are the people that are currently professional? What are the entrepreneurs currently doing? What kind of businesses are we currently driving? I'm just thinking currently out of the perspective of a tourist, Kauai, 5 days. I see AC, I see Burger King, I see Shell, I see all the chains. Well, what's going on? I mean, why isn't there kind of a strong local regional economy? Well, that's probably part of the educational system not building the kind of entrepreneurs that could take this kind of ownership. I'm not saying that's the only thing. I know there are, obviously, big financial interests and so forth. But I'm saying the university could play a major role in creating local and regional economies where co-ops, B corporations, very innovative forms of doing business are really embraced. And it's happening. I mean, don't wait. I mean, across the country and across the world, people are reconsidering how we do business and how do we create economies all over the place. And finally, this cross-cultural sustainability education, again, lots and lots of activities going on. I'm just moving on here with one little example. We have done over the years what we call global classroom programs in order to also reduce kind of, shipping people in all sorts of directions of the world, and rather saying, how can we create a learning environment that would take advantage of our individual places through local projects where students engage with what is happening on the ground, and at the same time learning about similar experiences all over the world. So this is what we call a global classroom. It's very participatory action learning in the individual locations, but you connect via Skype or other advanced forms of teleconferencing once a week or more often in learning what are the experiences that are happening. Why is this working there and not working here? Or can we adopt some of these models? And again, topical areas could be as wide as mobility or food or energy or whatever you're interested in. Yeah, thank you. I'm aware. Finally, the last couple of minutes, I want to talk about institutional structures. So this is more on the vision side of things. Principles and specific ideas, what we could create as educational programs. But how do we make that happen? The first thing is it comes down to the realities of philosophy, money, and politics. And I just want to share with you, universities are on very different pathways. And this is a very small selection of mainly American universities, a little bit also international. And they have very different ways of incorporating sustainability. So for instance, at ETH in Zurich, where I taught for several years, or at Dartmouth College, they have a very niche-oriented. They create a little, doctoral program, summer school-like activity on sustainability, right? That is often, when you have very limited resources and not strong leadership and commitment, I don't think you're on that path, but just consider it as something that is out there. Then there is, at Lund University in Sweden or Portland State University, very strong and visible concentration. Portland State University, the Solutions Institute, and some of their programs, they are running out of this. But it is a concentration that is often, kind of a little bit pushed to the side, right? It allows definitely to build a strong community and can even create national and international visibility, but it's not really affecting the entire university. So there are some upsides and downsides to this model too. But I think you are more on pathways, the latter ones, more ambitious ones, system-wide incorporation. The University of British Columbia has no sustainability institute. There's a research center on sustainability, but they're not running programs out of this. John Robinson, who has worked there for about 20 years and became the first provost of sustainability, had this vision of every single student in every single program needs to do something on sustainability. And I'm not telling any dean or any professor what to do. I'm enabling what they want to do on sustainability, but I'm always in their face. That was his mission. That's what he did all his academic life, basically, at UBC, and he created a centerless network of sustainability. In every single department, in every single program, you can do something on sustainability. It was a very strong vision, and he had a lot of arguments on his side. I was always in his face saying, well, but you could do this network and still create a center of coordination and gravity where you have more advanced conversations and more cutting across and networking and coordination activities. And this is what happened at Arizona State University and Leuphana University in Germany, in Lüneburg, northern Germany, where there is strong schools of sustainability with undergraduate, graduate programs, PhD programs, professional certificates, and you have concentrations in business and engineering, and all over campus we have a minor in sustainability, right? What I'm saying here is it really depends on leadership, commitment, funds, and so forth to keep that in place. But there's not this one model. If you want to do successful sustainability, you can model it your way. And I think that's critical for your situation. I want to finish on the institutional structure with training needs to happen everywhere and learning needs to happen everywhere. I was invited to the universities in Mexico, UNAM and Tec de Monterrey, of providing some faculty training. And I think you should do that too. Don't invite me necessarily, invite Albie and others. And specifically requests Matt to coordinate some of this. He doesn't need to do it, he doesn't need to be heavily involved. He can take this to the level of where you get some resources and some time and some funds to make that happen. Faculty training on sustainable community food systems. What do we learn from this program? Or a TIMS program on sustainability science management. How have they done these programs? How can we transfer and scale some of the experiences there? And many other programs you have, right? I'm just picking out those two because these are kind of signature programs at some of the campuses, right? But this kind of train within your system and link people to allow learning already what you have here on campus, I think is very powerful, and a strategy that doesn't really require a lot of funds and a lot of institutional leadership. If you want to learn more about supporting infrastructure, we can share a lot of things. We've created internet platforms and repositories of projects and matchmaking platforms and all sorts of things. So, I mean, you know, the fancy technology end of things we can easily figure out. It's more how to bring people really together. Yeah, it's find your path. I mean, I started with you're not alone. You know, draw on others' experience as much as you want. I mean, contact me, and I'm happy to put you in contact with other people. But also take full advantage of all the amazing things you're doing across the 10 campuses. It's already all here, I would say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arnim. So just as I queue up Patrick's presentation, I want to say a brief note on how I met Patrick. I attended the 14th Annual California Sustainability and Higher Education Summit last year. And I stumbled into a presentation that Patrick was giving. It's the first time I had seen someone wearing an architectural or a planning hat talk about sustainability in terms of a milestone that you pass along the way to what our full potential is as human stewards of this planet. And so that's where our conversation started. Welcome to the mic.
Thank you. Thank you. Aloha. So the questions that we're asking ourselves, they really need to change. We need to do something different, but we have to start with changing our questions. And very often a question today that we ask is, how do we get to zero? Get to zero energy, zero carbon, but it's always some kind of pathway to get there. And instead, if we ask ourselves the question, well, what would it be simply like to just start at zero? Zero was our worst instead of our future best. And that would change everything. It would change the way we think. It would change the things that we do. And our progress will be much faster. And we'll get better results by doing that. As we do that, we can then really engage these native values that we've been talking about. And if we'd have gone straight forward with that, we'd be in such a much better place. There's been a little diversion, and we got a dirty past we got to clean up and get ourselves back on track. And this is the transformative time that we're in to be able to accomplish that. And we can do it by changing our questions. One of them would be, are we here to take or to take care of each other and the earth and to do better with what we have? So we started this process a few weeks ago, engaging many of you and a large group of colleagues from around your system and others in this concept of no one knows more than everyone, and active networks, and working the whole thing together. The values really knit us together in a powerful way. And so we started with this question in an electronic engagement of, imagine the world in 2060, and then looking back to today, what will have been the things that changed the most, that changed us the most, and changed the world to get to there? And what kind of world do we want that to be? Can we all be consumers? Or do we have to finally someday think about doing something better and giving back and producing? Will we get out of the carbon-based economy that we're in and into renewable energy? Doing buildings, is it better than leaving the place that we're going to build alone? Is the building better than no building? It should be. And so many questions like that were asked, and then the responses that came back from all of you and others are on the screen. And the more one topic was selected, the bigger the word. And what stands out substantially is water, and that was talked about a little bit this morning. And if I filter that down to the top 20, you can see the ones that will really be the drivers of future change, the mega forces that that get us to where we're going and the ones that we have to pay attention to. Freshwater access and freshwater awareness. That's really an education thing. We don't know we know little about energy. We're kind of getting there, but we know so much less about water and what it is and what it impacts. Climate change is really strongly connected to that. Energy infrastructure and renewable energy systems, and then the wealth gap showed up really strongly here, whereas in other times I've done that, it has not. So there's really something to this idea of abundance and resources and how we use things, and we just have to stop thinking about being consumers and really look at growing our future, benefiting, adding value. And if we start every single day at zero, it's not really just a design idea, it's a way of living and influencing and doing better with what we have. If we start at zero, then we can always true up with zero every single day and then look at, are we doing something better? And so out of this, sustainability has been relegated often to the right side, the target performance, energy, carbon, water, waste, materials, and a few other things. But in reality, it's all about all three of these things integrally connected together and doing them all at once. The human experience and the effects we have on people, that's really the core. It's everything about what we're doing. And then connecting that to the power of financial prosperity, best value. So we want to do the best we can for people. In your context, it's what are the best learning environments we can build? Engaging people deeply in the process, building highly satisfying environments to be in that are inspiring and very good, healthy and well, and then connecting that to the performance. So there's a way to approach that in making 7 goal areas and then thinking about the future first. So all of our meters on the left are at 0, and we're going to try really hard not to let them go below 0. We're going to always be trying to move them to the positive side. And on the right side, we have to recognize always there's a scale of human experience. It starts first with the individual and then goes to sizes of people that are in buildings, on sites, campuses, and then finally to our larger communities. So I imagine our ideal future state. Could we finally get to restoring the health of people and the land and water around us? Can we make energy without using fossil fuels? Can we actually clean the air instead of just making it less dirty? Renew our water resources, get rid of the idea of waste altogether. Nature just, it doesn't make waste. We make waste, and we got to get out of that. If we do that, then we'll have closed loop systems and the economy will become a circular engine producing powerful prosperity. Interface Carpet was a leader in the industry and have achieved carbon neutrality as of the early 2000s, according to a report by their CEO. And as they reduced their carbon footprint, their profits went through the roof. So sustainability can be financially prosperous, and the things are connected together. So as we establish where we're trying to get to, then we back in to where we are today, always pushing ourselves to go a little bit further, a little bit faster, do a little more, stretch, not just be satisfied. And so we have to acknowledge, of course, where we are, and we can't do everything all at once, but we can certainly stretch ourselves. And very commonly now around the country, we're seeing goals for these kinds of aspirations showing up in 2030, 2025, something that really makes us move instead of so far out in the future we're just kicking the can down a couple generations and somebody else will solve the problem. And the way we do what we're doing, the way we accomplish these things is as important as the end result, deep engagement with people. So this is an example of a case study for a project where we were working on these ideas, asking questions like this and saying, nobody gets energy until you prove the value of what you're going to do with it. You don't get any water unless you show why it's needed and you're doing something good with it. And in this team example, is what I'm going to go further with, but it starts with those goals, and then we get to a process where we can engage people a lot. We're going to go further with this in the afternoon session. We're using a tool called a set log. It's just an evaluation matrix. Across the top are criteria that a large group of people can contribute to.
And different ideas can be down the left side, and with the visual scoring, green is good and red is not. Against that criteria, we can record hundreds of ideas from a lot of different sources and create really a record or an artifact that helps people see where they were in that process. And then pairing that together with cloud-based and technology and parametric modeling, the simulation tools that we have now, they're really great because we can do things faster that we didn't used to be able to do at all. So we asked this question a few years ago. As we're simulating and modeling things, can we do in minutes what takes months, weeks, and days to do? And now we can with cloud-based technology. And then recently, parametric simulation has come in. And in one case example that's shown up on the screen there, we identified 6 variables, and the computer system was able to turn that into over 600,000 different ways of combining increments of those different variables. You could never get to that, no matter how hard you tried with a group of people. And within minutes, an optimized condition resulted, showing what the best payback was, what was the best combination, how much it would cost for first investment, and how fast it pays back. So if you pair all those things together, it makes a powerful combination that gets us, and it starts with new questions. One of my favorite ones about education and learning is, why are we still building the same old lecture-style classroom buildings that we've done? Learning isn't happening the same way. So the question here is, what will the learning environments and patterns of the future be? And 3 examples on the screen show all somewhat classroom kinds of experiences, but none of them really look like one. They're all learning environments, and they're active and interactive. The closest one to a real classroom, like we might think of, is the one on the right. It's a science teaching classroom, but that doesn't look like any traditional classroom. So we need to start with, what does the learning experience need to be, and then figure out what's the right kind of building to put around that, and make the environments. When will the students gather if learning can happen everywhere? And when don't they need to? When should they be together? And how and what will they do when they are together? And as we do that, there's really powerful results. That right side example tested in a post-occupancy survey, scored really high for satisfaction, learning performance, and a feeling of wellness. So we can do so very much better, and we can change what we're doing. In 2008 was when we first started asking these questions. What happens if we start at 0 in this college classroom and science laboratory building? And I was told it can't be done. I hate the word can't. We got to get rid of it. And so somebody said it can't be done, especially in a science classroom building. It's too much energy being used. You can't do net zero. And so, of course, I gave up, right? No, we've set out to prove that it could be done, because can't is just an invitation to show that it can be done. So working together as a collaborative team, we designed it, it's been constructed, and it's being occupied. It's LEED Platinum, it's been net zero energy, and we've gotten in the first 6 months or so of verification data with the building integrated photovoltaic system producing more electricity during the last 6 months than what the building was consuming. So it's off to a really great start, and we're going to continue tracking that. One campus said, let's do that for the whole entire campus. And so they did. They knocked down their high-emitting central plant and put in a state-of-the-art biomass gasifier plant to create heating. This is in a northern climate, and then 2 utility-scale wind turbines. And a few years ago, they achieved their goal of being net zero energy as a campus. And had they not sold the renewable energy credits, they could say they're carbon neutral. But the net end result is that they are carbon neutral. This is in Minnesota. So we start with this question of what can we make? And at another California campus, we started looking at their existing situation and saw we could make 6 million kilowatt hours of electricity in the year, but they were using 15. So a traditional approach would be say, okay, well, let's see how we can get to match that, right? But instead, we asked, well, no, you can't have any electricity until you prove you need it, so let's figure out from 0 what you actually really need and what you need it for. And we were able to then get instead to a 70% reduction. And this is a campus plan. They haven't implemented this yet, but it's a plan is off to a good start where they should be able to be positive on energy needs if they do it all according to this plan. One of my favorite conversations to have is with an engineer or a landscape architect for water and say, you can't have any water until you show the need. Well, in the Southwest, they'll first answer me back, it's going to look like a desert. No, that's not going to be okay. And in a science building, an engineer might say to me, well, I have to move air around. Yeah, I know you do, but we're going to stop doing things the same old way we always did them, and you have to show why you need that energy or water first. And a similar example on another campus, we found that they could, 200,000 square feet available to make solar energy, but one building was using half of that, of the 10 on that campus. So again, the same process applied, optimize that building and get it down so that the campus could be net zero. That one again is also a plan in place, not yet implemented. But then tying together the energy and the carbon, and carbon is a hard thing to understand. What is a ton of carbon anyway? So I usually equate it to annual car emissions. That existing building was using emitting 191 cars worth of annual emissions. The optimized building gets it down, but it still leaves 60%. It's basically nothing better than less bad. And so we can do better than that. So can we ask the question, can we get it to be zero? Along with the energy, can we actually clean the air? Is there even any version of that that we can do today? And so we got it to be just barely positive against the existing, and we'll keep pressing forward with that. And all those emissions are really costing us. This map showing the darker blue colors where the more fossil fuel emissions are coming in the world. The United States is really a big contributor. And it's costing us somewhere around $900 billion a year. It's a lot of money in just fixing what we're making as the problem. And one really powerful personal example is in a health system in Wisconsin. The doctor started figuring out that their system dedicated to community health was the biggest source of emissions in that community. And they were starting to see emissions-related illnesses showing up more and more in the clinic. And they asked, what is going on? And then found, are we the source? And sure enough, they were, or at least one of the bigger contributors to it. So they knocked down their high-emitting central plant and put in something clean. And as of last year, that system, as reported out, as being carbon neutral and net zero energy as of last year. And so that's a big accomplishment, both for performance and the connection to human health. The water question, big deal. Again, no one gets water till we can prove its value. In this case example, we're trying to figure out what the water balance would be. And we established the rainwater falling on the site as the annual balance point. So 700,000 gallons a year was all that we got to use. So we said, all right, nobody gets more than that, and you better find a way to get less. And it was using 2.2 million gallons. So we had a long way to go. Now, traditional approach would be to start from the 2.2 and try to get down, down, down. But we said, no, that's just too much effort. Let's just start from zero. You don't get anything until you prove you need it. And the way that resulted in this approach, building up from what are the essential functions that we have to give water for. We need water to drink. We need some for a few functions in the building, and a few other things like a little bit of landscape irrigation, but not 2 million gallons worth. So we started from, we're gonna drink some water and we need to do a few other things, but we're not using water for things where there's an alternative. And they were using a lot of water for landscape irrigation because the only way to make things beautiful in their mind was to have irrigated lawns. And we showed them that there's another way to have just as much functionality and some good beauty. We don't need to use water to make cooling air, so we used other systems. And then the building fixtures, very low flow, and then other essential functions, leaving a positive balance of about 500,000 gallons a year, reducing it from the 2 million. And we're doing the same thing in the Southwest. This example is an office building in the Palm Springs area where we have an engineered wetland. So we have a zero a closed loop for water, and the only hang-up is the local municipality and the health department not allowing the water to be made back into potable for health concerns. But it's technically possible, and we're reusing all of the water in as closed loop as we can, getting down from the allowance of 22 million gallons a year to just under 2, about 1.5. So we've achieved a balance point there. And so we add all that up together, and what does it mean? Because that's a lot of water, and it's hard to relate to. So the 2 million gallons saved is about the annual drinking water needs of 7,300 people. If you multiply that by a number of buildings, let's say 200, you get to the annual drinking water of all of the population of Hawaii by just doing that couple of moves. We can get there. And so if we start at 0, we can get someplace better. We have to learn what water does, like our previous speaker. And so while I was working on this case example, I was snacking on some almonds, and I was having somebody look up what's the embodied water for food. And they said, well, you had 10 almonds, I just watched you, and so you also had 10 gallons of water with that snack. And I'm like, well, is that, and I started thinking, well, is that really worth it? Well, I really do like almonds that much. But that makes me stop and think, am I going to use water to make green grass and to make it grow and then put fertilizer on it so that it grows faster and greener, and then use a carbon emitting thing to cut it down and then water it some more, and you know the cycle? Or am I going to use it for drinking and food? And most other things are really optional. Same thing with waste. Lots of communities around the world are now adopting zero waste goals. And in that science classroom example, we diverted near 100% of the construction waste. So that's what we can get to right now, but let's do that one. And so that means all of that tonnage of waste is now back in a loop of being remade into something else instead of sitting in landfill. And then into our environment with materials, we can copy nature, at least not use the worst in class chemicals, and do some really good things in a closed loop system. All of that leading to some really great financial prosperity. One of these case examples was using $200,000 a year for their energy. Reduction would get us to savings of 80 to 100, and a lot of people would be very satisfied. That's good performance, right? Who wouldn't want that? But if we go all the way to net zero, we get that 200, the whole 200 back. And then what does it take to get there? What do we have to invest? Well, we don't know in some cases, but if it's somewhere between 500,000 and even if it's 2 million, it's within a reasonable payback period. And over the lifespan of the building, you're investing a little and then you get positive cash flow. So all of this engine starts producing prosperity and abundance, and we do much better. So really compelling concluding question. When the college freshmen of today were in kindergarten, what was that world like? It's changed quite a bit since then. I used to have a flip phone. Now I got 3rd or 4th generation smartphones and various other things. But even better is the question of when today's kindergarten kids are your college freshmen in about the year 2030, will we have done anything significantly different by then, or will we have left this problem to them to fix? I met a group of 4th graders a few weeks ago that are asking some very compelling questions. And through a selection and a process that we would have trouble passing, they had to present boards, and they're coming to Maui next month to present, as I understand it, at a renewable energy conference. These kids are asking really awesome questions, and they're smart, and they don't want us to leave this problem to them, and they don't know the word can't. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Patrick. Sorry, Jess. So just a brief note on how I met Jessica. Jessica called me with an interesting request one day if I do have any students that might want to go with her to Cuba to prepare for Hokulea's arrival there. And one of the students with us, Kiha, got to go. And so if you want to hear about Cuba, sit next to him at lunchtime, put your hand up. It's hard to miss. Since then, well, I'll let Jessica share what we've been working on since then.
Aloha kako. Thank you so much, mahalo, for having me here today. Happy International Women's Day. I think that was yesterday, but I'm one of the first women on the panel today, so give it up for the ladies. Yes. My name is Jessica Warshell. I am the board chair for Peace Child International. I'm also a former delegate at the Morocco Congress in 2003 for the World Youth Congress. My day job is I work for the Hawaii Department of Education. I was chief of staff to the superintendent for 2 years and have recently transitioned into a really exciting project in the newly established Office of Hawaiian Education, which just was founded 1 year ago. And we're pushing forward a pilot project called Nā Hopena A'o, which you should Google and look up. It's a new board policy, and we'll be looking at system-wide implementation across the state. But it's a set of learning outcomes that is grounded in Hawaii and very powerful, so looking at breadth. But today I'm here to talk about Peace Child. And with me today, I want to bring the hundreds of voices of the youth and adult mentors that are part of Peace Child. So this is not just me. Kiha being one of them. We also have Yvette Solis, who's our youth chair for programming and attended the Turkey and Brazil Congress. So you can also talk to those two. I also want to thank and acknowledge Dr. Ula Hassiger back here, who had a profound impact on my growth as a student at UH Manoa many years ago. So thank you, Ula. She's a phenomenal educator. So I think I have no technical background in sustainability, but I think that I was asked here today by Matt because I have some experience in what he termed disruptive education, which I really love that idea. And noticing that education was actually one of the words in our pre-survey that came up the most in terms of what's going to bring about change. How are we educating our keiki? How are we educating our youth to envision and to not say can't, to actually see beyond what we already currently have? And that's what Peace Child and the World Youth Congress is about. And so I want to share with you today our plans for World Youth Congress in 2017, give you a little background on Peace Child, its connection to Hawaii, and also the model that we use. And the model is very much one of the most profound books I've ever read is Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire. So you should take a look at that if you have not. And it's an approach to educating that is incredibly dynamic in what we're talking about today. I also recognize that later we'll be talking about state of the planet, so hopefully this will be a little bit uplifting in preparation for that conversation. So moving into our overview of Peace Child International. So this organization's been around for quite some time. It was founded in 1982 in the United Kingdom, actually by two artists this was during the time of the Cold War, intense hostilities between the Soviet Union and Western countries, and so they designed a Peace Child musical which brought together young people from the various areas to go around and talk about how they could see a future beyond the Cold War. So very powerful impact there. Later focus moved into environmental degradation and sustainable development in the 90s, and we continue to carry that forward, but they're also looking at youth employment issues, particularly in developing countries. The continent of Africa and then India are some other areas that they work in. So, but it was founded with this idea that to help harness, and I would actually change the word harness to unleash the energy, creativity, and skills of young people around the world to come together to solve some of our most pressing issues. And with that, their vision is a future in which young people are actively involved in their communities and provide this vision for us to move forward and propel. And we value the ideas, the voices, and goals of youth and the brilliance that can be unleashed through the right supports. So one of the programs, the one I'll be speaking to today, is the World Youth Congress. And this is a gathering of global young leaders and activists to address and take action on these pressing global issues. So it's really about inspiring, empowering, and networking, as Matt's been speaking to. How do we create these networks globally? And young people are much better at it, I think, than we are in terms of being able to network and tap that energy. It's also a chance to enhance public opinion. So not just to have youth at the table either as figureheads or talk to them after the fact, but actually bring them in as part of the process and really get people to engage young people and value what they have to say. And then it also works to build the critical skills, knowledge, and networks. So the entire planning of a World Youth Congress is done through what we call this co-management philosophy. And this is a specific form of engagement where it's actually youth-led and adult-supported. So the youth are designing, preparing, and creating what these congresses will look like with the support of adults, because we don't want them to continue to have to run into the roadblocks that we may already know, and help give them the guidance and access to resources and networks. But it's difficult, you know, it's hard for us who think that we know so much to step aside and actually let the young people take charge, but that's really something we practice. And as an adult mentor supporter with Peace Child, you have to learn how to sometimes step back and really let the youth lead. But what this does is builds this culture of responsibility, and I see it every day. I mean, the fact that Yvette came today to support, and she's actually gonna be running a workshop on Saturday with the young people here at the Sustainability Conference. Kiha, who has spoken up, done a Cuba forum after returning, they really step up and take responsibility, and the adults who come behind and support them in that is really powerful. And our founder, David Wolcombe, talks about, you know, you can define the success of it by whether the kids are showing up. I think a lot of times we look at this issue of attendance, you know, at our education system. Well, if you make it interesting and engaging, they will show up. So maybe it's not a problem with the kids, but it's a problem about how we're creating the system within which we're educating. So that's how we measure our success. Are the young people engaged? Little background on the World Youth Congress that actually has a very strong connection to Hawaii. So we hosted the first World Youth Congress here in 1999. Woohoo! It was the Millennium Young People's Congress, and some of you may have heard about it back then. We had 800 youth come here, hosted by, we had 400 host families. So had a very broad connection here. It has left a legacy. The Leahi Peace Garden at the base of Diamond Head was actually built during that time, and there's actually a time capsule in there, which in I think it's 2030 will be opening up. So to see what the youth of that time said and where we are. Also in the state capitol, there's a mural in there, so there's a long connection. From there, it went to Morocco, which I was a delegate at, an incredibly powerful experience. And that was actually, at the time, looking at how young people could engage in the Millennium Development Goals. From there, moved into Scotland, and then Canada, where they looked at youth evaluation systems and how can youth be a part of the evaluation process. In Turkey, they were focusing on an action toolkit. In Brazil, which again you can talk to Yvette about, that was for the Rio 20 summit, so they came together and put forward a proclamation from the youth on what they wanted to see at that summit. And had been planned for Guinea in 2014, but as you may know, there was the Ebola virus outbreak at that time, so that's been postponed, hopefully to be revitalized moving forward. So long history here we have with the World Youth Congress. And again, I guess some more deeper connections. Why now Peace Child International Hawaii? So the founders this has been really their life, just recently retired, so that's David and Rosie Wolcombe. And at the time, the UK office had started to focus more and more on youth employment, and much of the work had been done in Europe and Africa, but always had this strong connection to Hawaii, and we've always had a delegation attend. So David came out about a year and a half ago and rallied up the community of people that had been involved and was saying, you know, we think that perhaps we need a balance from what's happening over in there and something in the Pacific, and you guys have been so engaged. What would you think about hosting and holding the World Youth Congress here in Hawaii, and perhaps being the headquarters to actually hold the license and work with other countries? And a few of us who were crazy said, yes, we'd like to do that. And so we also, in connection to that, thought that it would be so powerful. Hawaii has so much to share that this would be the headquarters for this initiative. And part of that is, you know, the aloha spirit, so the connection of the mind and the heart, which allows young people to move forward from a positive place. There's so much that we see in the world that is destructive, discouraging, and I think the aloha spirit is something that we can share. Anytime you've traveled abroad, if you say you're from Hawaii, it immediately puts a smile on people's face, just to think about that. So we have that to share. We also have this concept of aloha aina, so this emphasizing the connection between land and people, not people over land. And we're very fortunate in Hawaii to have an indigenous culture that is still connected to the land. Many places have lost that, either through dislocation, through genocide, various efforts. They do not have the strong connection of the people that are still living and breathing on that land that they can still learn from. They can go back and reconstruct, but we are very fortunate here in Hawaii to still have that very powerful presence. And we also have some incredible young people who are really engaged. So we said yes, and we said yes to then also hosting a World Youth Congress in 2017 to align with the return of the Hokulea, which will be coming back that summer, because we felt it really catalyzed a lot of the events that have been going on. We also felt that we aligned very closely with the guiding principles of Peace Child. So as we started to look at our philosophy on this co-management, we're looking at our kapuna, our markua, our keiki, and this connection, this intergenerational connection that is so critical. And then also this idea of the haumana and the kumu, so the learner and the teacher, that we must all step in and out of those spaces. And in that we designed we have a Kapuna Advisory Council, our Board of Directors, our Chief Management Team, and our committee structure. Youth are involved in all components of this, but each plays a role, and it is a circular connection in order to approach co-management. So how do we plan a World Youth Congress in Hawaii? We bring people together. We've engaged over 400 young people in the idea of what the theme should look like. We then pulled together a theme development conference up at Kamehameha schools, where young people and adults engaged and gave pitches for what our theme should be. We've also been doing action planning, so young people are coming together frequently in their committee structures to begin to plan the various aspects of the World Youth Congress and what they've come up with. So our theme is finding your piko, reconnecting to our sustainable roots, which really connects to the conversations earlier this morning. And also this idea of, ultimately the three picos have at the head, which is our connection to our kapuna, our past, our ancestors, which puts us all together into this planet. We have our piko in the center, which is our current contemporary, where we stand in the present, and then we have our piko down in our genitals, which is our descendants moving forward. So thinking of those picos, how do we connect it? How do we reconnect? Sustainability is totally not a new, I guess it's a word now. It used to not be, right? It used to be what we did. What we do to survive, and we are currently in a situation where we need to figure out how to reconnect so we can survive, and our young people are asking us to do that and are actually going to be pushing us out of the way if we don't. So really important that we're looking at sort of how to bring light to these indigenous traditions. Again, it is a return of the celebration, or a celebration of the return of the Hokulea and its 3-year voyage. Malama Honua, which is their theme, completely connected with that. And as a state, how do we welcome her back? We will not be setting the dates based on her return, because you never know when she'll show up, but we will be encouraging the celebration. The Congress will have 8 days of workshops, plenaries, roundtables, cultural events, really exciting, interactive across Oahu. But at the same time, we'll also be hosting 3 days of local action projects. And this will be 30 local action projects across the state. So young people will be going out, rooting into the communities, and our young people have decided they would like to explore ahupua'a, so actually look at that system of land management. So we'll be looking at bringing communities together to talk about their different ahupua'a systems and how that process works. We'll be hosting 400 international delegates, 200 local delegates who will be leaders in their community, and then engaging 30 communities statewide, along with a massive planning process. So really looking to bring in all the different folks, the university systems, the public education system, private schools, community organizations, to be able to highlight and showcase what Hawaii has to offer and to learn from the youth that are coming from different places. And within that, to gain the most learning, we typically put folks in sort of 3 tracks. Our journalists and communicators, so the ones that can tell the story of what's happening here and back in their communities. Our community organizers, leaders, activists who can help put it all together and rally folks, and then our cultural performers and artists who really speak through different forms of expression other than just standing up and talking at a podium. So we'll be looking at the different tracks there. So to conclude, I hope this was inspiring for you and that you would like to stay involved. Again, this is a statewide effort. We are hoping to partner with the University of Hawaii system and perhaps host the Congress, the majority of it here at UH Manoa. We'll be engaging the sustainability youth later on Saturday to help involve, but would love to keep you involved if you'd like to host action projects, to be involved in a committee, to host a convening, many different ways to bring youth together with adult mentors in different contexts. If you have young people that would like to be part of the process, please reach out. So mahalo again. I'll step aside so you can get to lunch soon, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Patrick and Arnim. Let's just another round of applause, show our appreciation. So, I really wanted to hear from Amy Brinker today and hear about the boardroom to classroom project. I'm hoping we can get her in the morning. She has a pretty tight schedule. But we've got, I know there are hungry people in the room. We've got a lot of work to do this afternoon. So I'm gonna set you up to go to the break. And just in case we don't see Amy tomorrow, let's just show her some aloha and appreciation for working with me and being flexible. Okay, so lunch is scheduled from 1 to 2. We have a luncheon keynote from Dr. Victoria Keener, who will be delivering the State of the Planet update beginning at 1:20. And the lunch service, buffet line should open at 1, so it's a pretty tight schedule. It is 10 to the hour though, so we've got some time. Those of us that are the most hungry can dash to be the first in the line. And those of us that want to engage a little more with some of these posters, you have an opportunity to do so as well. Nicole, would you mind speaking a little bit about the food waste management reduction protocols, I guess, for our luncheon? We were able to pull off a zero waste event last year, and we're working hard to do the same again.
All right, so we have orange 5-gallon buckets downstairs next to larger recycling bins. So those will hold your glass and your plastic bottles if you happen to get any of those in here. And then we have a bucket for compostables, compostable plates. And we cannot put the forks and the cups in there because, as most of you are probably well aware, we don't have industrial composting in Hawaii at all, so they actually won't compost in a regular pile. So I'm gonna take them to the Art Explorium in Kaimuki. If you guys haven't heard about it, it's awesome, where kids will make reused projects out of the forks and cups after they clean them. So everything's well signed. If you're confused about the system, look for myself or Kristen Jameson. I don't see her in here right now, but she did a lot of work to help set up the composting with SOFT, the Student Organic Farming Training Program. And that's up here on campus, so they're going to be taking and composting all of the food waste. Yes, and lunch is downstairs. Thank you.
Okay, so don't go away just yet. We won't be together as a General Assembly until tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. But I'll chat with you to set you up to your working sessions after the lunch keynote. Enjoy lunch, and we'll see you in an hour.